Trucker Dump, episode 159. Well, it's been over 2 months since the last episode, so we're skipping the main topic today to get caught up on a crap ton of news. We've got several recalls, new emissions and inspection standards, autonomous and electric trucks, Teamster elections, the top 500 trucking companies, fixing the supply chain issues, tips for driving in bad weather or avoiding it altogether, and new places for truckers to park. We've also got big stories on the proposed vaccine mandate, lots of new legislation, and a trucker who got a major break on his sentence after a fiery wreck. And perhaps most importantly, we'll start the show with some hand signals every trucker should know to combat human trafficking. We'll point you to some good Southern eating in the Trucker Grub segment, and in listener feedback, we'll discuss everything from broken websites to the future of trucking to some clarification on the latest hours of service rules. This episode of Trucker Dump is sponsored by Volvo Trucks and Porter Freight Funding.
Welcome to Trucker Dump, where you'll get one driver's insights and sometimes humorous views of truck driving and the trucking industry, and pretty much anything else he feels like dumping on you. This podcast is brought to you by AboutTruckDriving.com. Resources to help you understand the world of truck driving through the use of stories and a pathetic attempt at humor.
Hey, Trucker Dumpers. Happy New Year. Yep, it's 2022. Can you believe that crap? For those new to the show, my name is Todd McCann. I'm the host of this here podcast. I am a almost 25-year trucker, 22 years of that over the road. The last 3, Teamster for an LTL company. I'm obviously a podcaster, I'm a blogger, I'm an occasional freelance writer, although I haven't done that in a long time, but I am an author of 2 trucking ebooks. One is called How to Find a Great Truck Driving Job, and the other is called Trucking Life, with a really long subtitle. If you want to check those out, both of those can be found at abouttruckdriving.com. Got a special running on those. If you want to buy both books it's 25% off. You can get that on my website only. If you want the books individually, you can go to Amazon or Apple Books or wherever you normally get your ebooks. And I'd like to mention that for the Trucking Life book, there is also a 9.25 hour audiobook that is included free with that. You'll just have to find the link in the book there and download it, listen to it. It'll occupy one whole shift of your driving. That is, if you're a driver. Probably most people wanting to listen to that book aren't drivers yet, so it might take them a month to get through it. And you'll have to sit through 9.25 hours of my voice, so I apologize in advance. So, how did everyone's holiday go? Man, once again, hectic. I believe last year I told you that this may happen. That, it was just too hard to put out episodes in November and December with my full-time schedule, running 60 to 70 hours a week. And, now I've got union stuff to deal with since I'm an alternate steward and all. And, got the home life to have fun with, and have time for that. And just have a lot going on. And this year was worse than most. Yeah, just couldn't really get into the spirit of things. We had some things going on. First, the cat, our cat, our beloved cat, Hamster, Hamsterdamus, whatever you want to call him. We call him Hamburger, Hamburglar, Burglar, Burger. It's a pet. We got about many names for him. But anyway, he's about 17 years old, getting kind of up there in years, and he had something happen to him, and we couldn't figure it out. But he was freaking out. All of a sudden, he'd just be standing there, and all of a sudden, he'd take off running across the room, yowling, and it was freaking us out. And, well, as most of you know, the evil overlord is, not driving anymore. She's at home, and she's better friends with that cat than she is me. So this really tore her up quite a bit. We had to take him to the ER. He had to spend some nights away from us, which is very stressful on him. He's a kind of a wuss when it comes to that stuff. Doesn't like other people at all. I mean, heck, he barely tolerates me being in the house. Anyway, couldn't figure out what was going on at first, but we finally figured out that somehow he managed to dislocate his jaw or something like that. And the real worrisome part of that was the vet said that often comes with bone cancer. The bones get weak and then, they pop it out of place, and then even if they can get it back in place, it, sometimes won't stay in place. It'll pop out again. And if bone cancer is there isn't much you can do about it except for just wait it out. And sometimes it's just better to put them down. That's horrible. Nobody wants to do that. My friend Chris Mack just had to put down his beloved dog, Brutus, after he's not been well for a while. And, he hung on as long as he could. And then Chris did the right thing and let him go. So Brutus will be missed. No, that's sad. Sorry about that, Chris. That really sucks. But Hammy is much better now. Thank God for that. He's starting to fatten up again. He hadn't eaten in about 7 days, which is strange for him since he's a chow hound and always wants food. But he's pulling through. He's fattening up a bit. But, that took a while to get through that. And also we've had some issues with Lorinda's mother. She had to go into the hospital. She's in a lot of pain with her legs and back and can barely get around anymore. She's in her 80s. And her dad is also in pretty bad shape, had a surgery himself on a carotid artery. And good grief, I sound like an old person talking about all my aches and pains, don't I? Well, they're not my aches and pains. But, the evil overlord herself has been in some pain, and it's been hard for her to deal with her, help her mom the way she would like to. So we just got all this going on, and it's just really been hard to get in the spirit of things, just so much depression going on. Plus this time of year, is when Trucker Bob passed on from cancer a few years back. And, he was the guy behind starting the Slack channels, so anybody that appreciates that Slack group over there, which you can get an invite to that by just sending me an email to truckerdump@gmail.com and asking to be a member of the Slack group. But that all came about because, Trucker Bob, and he passed away on December 23rd a few years ago. So missing him, man, just not a good Christmas altogether, right? As you'll hear me mention later in the show, my website even got hacked and it was down for, 2 or 3 weeks. Thankfully, nobody ever visits the website or tries to download the podcast, so only a few people noticed. We'll talk about that later on in the show. Anyway, just wasn't a good holiday season overall. Like I said, hard to get into the spirit of anything. I hope you had a better Christmas. It did kind of get better right towards the end. The evil overlord is really good at Christmas. She's all kinds of creative. The nephews, when they were young, she used to have scavenger hunts for them on Christmas Day. She used to put trails of gifts, where they could follow them to the next gift and all kinds of creative stuff like that. Well, she got a little creative this year too. My eldest nephew is in his 22 now, I believe, Jake, and Jake, you never recognize his deep voice now, but Jake is the nephew who says at the very end of the podcast, Todd doesn't know what he's doing. Yeah, that's him. He was about 8 at the time. He had picked up my phone and I was working on the podcast actually at the time, and he was making fun of me and picked up my phone and said I didn't know what I was doing, which turns out it's pretty accurate, right? No, anyway, what had happened this year is everybody's been trying to get a PlayStation 5, right? Everybody. I mean, it's bad. You go online. He's been wanting one. He gave the evil overlord some money for it. These things are like $500, and he gave her the money for it, and she was trying to get a hold of one for him. And she was telling me, man, I just can't get a hold of one. Every time I try to get online, to get one, I get in the waiting list, and then something happens. Either something goes weird with the cart, or the website crashes, or they put it back. She puts it in the cart and then it throws it back into the queue, and she just keeps missing them. And she was getting pretty frustrated. Well, she finally got a hold of one, but she told Jacob that she didn't get one. So that was pretty cool because, I got to wrap it all up for him and everything. And he wasn't expecting one. He thought she said she had told him that she might have access to one after Christmas, but it definitely wouldn't be here before Christmas. And so he wasn't getting his hopes up or anything like that, But, well, it came in. I wrapped it up for him and, we got to give that to him on Christmas, but even in typical evil overlord fashion, well, at Christmas, she's not always that evil. Well, kind of evil, I guess, but depends on how you look at it. Anyway, what had happened was she wanted me to go out to the car, leave it out in the car. And then on Christmas morning, she was going to send Jacob off into the other room. And when I send me out for it, and when I came back in, he'd be like, "What's that?" And we had double wrapped it. So it was, not in a PlayStation 5 sized box, right? So that's a good old trick. So anyway, she sends me out for it and I come walking back in with a big grin on my face, expecting him to be smiling. And he comes walking out of the back bedroom with the gift in his hand. And we just look at each other like, what is happening here? Yeah. So anyway, I was really confused because I knew what he got. And once I saw the gift, I was pretty sure I knew what I got. But I knew I had double wrapped his and I had only single wrapped mine. And the evil overlord saying, "Go ahead and open it. Open them at the same time." And I thought I was going to beat him and I didn't want to ruin the surprise. And she kept saying, "Just open it. Just open it." Well, later on, I found out that Jacob had known that she got me a PlayStation 5 too. So he thought I was getting one. I thought he was getting one. So she did her magic again, and we both opened our gifts at the same time. And Jake and I have both been, comparing notes on how cool it is. Of course, he's getting to play way more than me because, I have a full-time job. Well, he does too, but it's not like trucking. He's not doing all the other stuff either. So anyway, it's really cool. The PlayStation has great graphics, better than I thought it would. And I don't even have a TV to support it. It's really designed for a 4K TV. And I've just got a older plasma TV. Looks great and plays great. Been playing not a lot. Been playing Destiny 2 when I get a chance. But, with everything else going on right now, it's a little hard to, say, "Hey, evil overlord, I don't really care what you're going through right now, but I'm going to play some Destiny too." That's not cool. That's how divorces happen. Anyway, only problem is that PlayStation 5 is a weird machine. It's just a weird machine. Just the way it's designed and everything. It's not flat. It's designed to stand up, which doesn't fit in an entertainment system. Anyway, it's just weird. So, sorry I went into all that. I just, that's about the best thing that happened at Christmas. But, it's a new year now. I am trying to get into working out again. I kind of slacked off towards kind of isn't the proper word. I did slack off for quite a while, and here I am paying for Apple Fitness Plus. I like the service. I'm paying for it, but I wasn't using it very much. And I have vowed to use it more this year, get my money's worth, because, I'm a tightwad and all. Problem was I was like 9 days in and I had used it once. So I wasn't doing very good. But, here we are 16 days in and I've used it 3 times. And it will get better. Hopefully. So anyway, I did have to kick out this podcast now or it was going to be a while. And actually the next one may be a bit late too, because here's something new going on for me. I am a mentor at my company. I'm a safety trainer and a mentor, and with mentoring goes along being a driver trainer. Now, I have mentored guys before. Mentoring to us is, taking an experienced driver and taking them on the road with you for a week. And, of course, they get their own hotel room every night and all that stuff since I'm in a day cab. But, we just kind of walk them through the job, how to do it, and, teach them union rules and work rules and all that stuff like that. Well, that's pretty easy. You got an experienced driver. You're not worried about them. But we now have students coming into our company. So I have my first student starting Monday. That'd be Monday, January 17th. So by the time you're listening to this, I'm probably out with my first student. So this is going to be interesting. I've never trained a student fresh out of school before. I am very interested. I'm probably as nervous as he is about this. I feel like I'm a pretty good teacher, but you just never know until you get into it. You know, there's a fine line between teaching a guy something and just talking his ear off. And I've been known to do that before. So I'm going to have to really keep myself in check. So anyway, I'm going to have that added stress, and that's going to be for 3 to 4 weeks probably. And, you know, since we got day cabs, it's either pack really light or put your suitcase and everything in the trailer and unload it every time you get in and out of that trailer. You know, you drop that trailer. Nobody wants to do that. So anyway, very interesting November, December, and January for me. Hope your world's going a little bit better than mine. And well, I guess we should just get on with the show since I've rambled on for about, 15, 16 minutes. And I have promised you that you have got some really important information coming up right here at the beginning of the show. So here it is. Okay. Everyone paying attention? Okay. Every trucker should know this. This went viral a while back. And what this is it is a hand signal for if you are under duress, meaning if you are trapped like in a car or, you know, you see somebody in a truck stop, something like that. There's this hand signal they have designed where you can give this hand signal kind of discreetly. And you know, it's a universal sign. So if you see it, you'll know that person is under duress and you can call 911 on this. So I put a link to it in the show notes here. It's a TikTok video. Let me just describe it for you if you don't want to go. But basically, you hold your hand up like you're going to say hi to somebody, and then you put your thumb in the palm of your hand, and then you close your 4 fingers over the top of your thumb. And if you do that, if you see somebody doing that, you'll know they are in trouble. Please call 911. As you know, drivers, we are on the front lines for this human trafficking stuff. You know, we see things. If you see a young girl with a guy and it just doesn't look comfortable, an older guy, and, you know, you can almost tell it's not a dad-daughter situation. Just keep your eyes open, you know, hopefully they're teaching all the kids this and, all the younger people this. So if they ever get in this situation, they will be able to get out of it. So again, like I said, that is the most important thing you are going to hear in this podcast. Please don't turn it off at this point, but I hope you get that. And I really hope you go look at this video so you can actually see, what it looks like. Oh, and hey, there's one other thing I wanted to mention, unrelated. I was talking with some longtime truckers that I work with, and I don't remember how we got off on the subject, but I just thought this would be a good reminder to truckers out there, especially new truckers. There's this misconception that we as truckers, for weights, gross weights, we can have 12,000 on the steers, 34,000 on both sets of axles on, your typical 5-axle truck. But that is incorrect. Okay. If you look in the Truck Atlas, which I don't know, probably most truckers nowadays don't even have a Truck Atlas, but you will see there are certain states that allow more than 34,000 on axles, on the tandem axles, and pretty much every state allows more than 12,000 on the steers. We get that because, 34,000 on both axles, and if you add that up, and then it's 12 more thousand to get up to our 80,000 max. Okay. That makes sense math wise, but say you're, 30,000 on each axle. Well, now you're only at 60,000, which means you could have up to 20,000 on your steers. Now, that's a little bit of an exaggeration. There shouldn't be that much weight on your steers because what it's really, the steers is a weird formula. If you look in the Atlas, it shows it's like by the tire rating and the pounds per square inch, depends on how much weight you can have on that steer. But I guarantee you it's almost always more than 12,000. I've gone with, almost with over 13,000 on my steers before and rolled across scales, never a word, as long as you axle out correctly on your tandems. So anyway, that's just a little thing I thought, hey, we were just talking about that. I ought to remind all the Trucker Dump listeners about that. So anyway, we were just talking about that, and it was a reminder to me that, hey, this is one of those things that often gets overlooked or just new drivers didn't know. So I thought I would share that with you. So, anybody ever tells you can't have more than 12,000 on your steers, you can tell them, nope, you're wrong about that. And then you can feel all cocky and stuff. All right. We have got a crap load of news today. Like I said, over 2 months of it and, not even enough time for a topic. Wow, man. Anyway, I'm thinking about doing something different on this. Stay tuned in the episode. I will talk about that later on in the show and want to get your thoughts on it. Okay? All right, let's get on with the news. So what happens when you wait over 2 months to put out a podcast? Well, of course, the truck recalls pile up. We got 2 here from Western Star. Let's see. The first one is an electrical issue. It's the big one affecting over 7,100 trucks. That'd be models 2017 through 19, Western Star 4,700, 4,900, 5,700, and 6,900 trucks. Apparently there was some kind of a power stud that passes through the bulkhead. In certain circumstances, the power stud may contact the bulkhead and result in an electrical arc, which could, of course, cause a fire. And the second one is for just a few trucks, 479. Well, that's more than a few, I guess, but 479 of them. That is for models year 21 and 22 Western Star 49X trucks. Apparently the steering shaft may have not been properly installed and could possibly separate from the steering gear. So both of those major issues. Of course, there will be links in the show notes to everything I talk about in this episode, including these recall numbers. For those of you who are new to the show, the show notes are either on abouttruckdriving.com, and this was episode 159, or they will be somewhere in your podcast app if it supports it. Swipe up, left, down, or right, or tap a button, or whatever you need to do to find the links to all the show notes, and there's sometimes photos and stuff in there too. And also, let me take a minute to point out another way you can get the show notes delivered to your doorstep every single time there is an episode, and that is to go to abouttruckdriving.com and subscribe. Just put in your email. That's pretty much all I use that email address for. Of course, I'm not going to sell it or anything like that, but I put a link to all of the show notes, all of these links in that email, and shoot it off to you as soon as a new episode is released. So you can pull it up nice and handy if you don't use a traditional podcast app. Next up, we've got another double whammy from Great Dane Trailers this time. The first is approximately 200 of them, years 2020 through 2022, Everest, Champion, and Freedom trailers. There was an issue with the anti-lock brake system on the trailers. Apparently the screws that secure the bracket cover and end cover of the ABS unit may have been improperly tightened, and that can allow the screws to loosen, of course, and cause a loss of pressure in the unit. And of course, loss of pressure when it comes to brakes means loss of brakes. That's not good. And the other one involves 3,200 Great Dane trailers. That would be year 2022 Champion dry van and Everest refrigerator trailers. Apparently the wheel hubs may have an insufficient amount of lubrication that could cause the hub bearings to fail. Here's another small one for you. Apparently 79 2021 Mack Granite and LR trucks are being recalled due to a machining effect that can cause pressure to build in the power steering pump and break the shaft seal, resulting in a loss of power steering. So you'll want to check that one out too. All of the above recalls can be found at overdriveonline.com. And for our last one, we're going to move over to freightwaves.com. This one is affecting Cummins X12 diesel engines. Boy, it's a big number of them, 11,000 engines. Problem is, it's probably not going to affect most of you because this was for specialized vehicles like mixers, coaches, emergency and recreational vehicles, cranes, and here's the one that might affect some truckers, refuge trucks. Refuge trucks. So refuge, that's hard to say. Refuge, trash trucks. So anyway, apparently there is a problem with the fuel injector supply tube. So you'll want to get that checked out if you're one of the very few people who is affected by this. I don't know, maybe we got a lot of garbage truck drivers here. I don't know. If you are, let me know. Email address is truckerdump@gmail.com. Always interested to hear who's listening to the show and what you do. Hey, speaking of faulty equipment, let's head on back over to overdriveonline.com. Well, apparently the DOT has something else to inspect on your truck now. Yep, there is a new rule that says rear impact guards are now included in the annual inspection requirements. Apparently, all of this got started because a truck safety advocate who is a mother of 2 children who were killed in a truck accident 8 years ago. So that's unfortunate, but as many of these regulations, it just always seems to start with some advocate who has lost a family member or something like that. And that makes sense, but wow. A lot of regulation comes from just a small number of incidents. I'm not trying to seem heartless here, but it just seems that way, doesn't it? That, 1 or 2 people have a problem and everybody suffers for it. But anyway, I guess this was documented back in 2017 that more than 2,300 violations that year were related to rear impact guards and rear end protection, more than half of which are for components that are missing, damaged, or improperly constructed. So if that's the case, I guess I can see it. Go for it. It seems to me a little weird that the DOT, this is the DOT bumper we're talking about. So honestly, it seems a little odd that that wasn't already a part of the DOT inspection. Why wouldn't it be? It's a safety bumper after all. Interesting. Well, anyway, boy, I hope you are not with a company kind of like mine who has ancient equipment and a lot of the bumpers are kind of rusted out and things like that, because there's going to be some steep fines on this. Apparently the trucks that fail to pass, they won't be placed out of service, but each violation could result in a maximum fine of over $15,000 for the carriers and over $3,900 for the driver. So, I don't know what we do. Apparently this started on December 9th. They're going to be checking for this. So, boy, I would not want to get that ticket. Yowza. $3,900 for a trailer that probably isn't even yours and was probably loaded by someone else, and you were probably not given much of an option to pull it or, to not pull it. So anyway, if you want more information on this, you can find it at overdriveonline.com, and just be sure to check your DOT bumper as you're doing your walk-around inspections and all that good stuff. You are doing your inspections, right? Continuing with the topic of equipment, let's stick with overdriveonline.com. And hey, a bit of common sense prevails. How do you like that? This one's called Court Reverses Obama-Era Trailer Emissions Standards. Apparently, the Truck Trailer Manufacturers Association won an appeal in the U.S. Court of Appeals that removes trailers from emissions requirements. This was enacted back in 2016. Apparently, the EPA, that's the Environmental Protection Agency, and the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, that's the NHTSA, they had rules saying that, trailers had to be fuel efficient, which was weird because they don't use fuel efficient. But, they're trying to say that, the trailer affects the fuel mileage of the truck. So, okay, I guess they can go, that's a stretch on that. So anyway, they were trying to do that by, making trailer manufacturers adopt stuff like aerodynamic side skirts, automatic tire inflation systems, fuel-saving technologies, and stuff like that. Well, apparently a 3-judge panel agreed that the EPA lacked authority to regulate trailers under the Clean Air Act. 2 of the 3 judges agreed that the NHTSA's authority also did not cover trailers in this context. And that's because, like I say, they are really only responsible for and have any control over powered vehicles. And since the trailer is not powered in any way, well, there you go. Now, one thing this didn't really address here is, what about reefers? I mean, they got a giant engine on the front, but it isn't really related to fuel efficiency, or fuel economy, I should say. Well, I guess maybe. Same goes with, engine standards. They have engine standards. I don't know if they have any standards for the reefers or not. If you know, let me know. truckerdump@gmail.com. But either way, it doesn't affect, how it goes down the road and how fuel efficient it is that way. Interesting. Well, of course, stories like this don't affect you, the driver, very often, but hey, it's good to know anyway, right? Sticking with the topic of emissions, let's head over to thetruckersreport.com. California targets heavy-duty vehicles with roadside smog check inspections. Yep, our good friends CARB, that's the California Air Resources Board, are at it again. Apparently, they are going to be checking trucks twice a year to make sure that they are, smog compliant. And these are just going to be kind of roadside inspections. At first I thought this was only for California truckers, truckers who actually own trucks in the state of California. But I do not think that's the case because, like I said a minute ago, they are going to be doing roadside inspections. They said the first roadside check stations expected to go online in the San Joaquin Valley along the south coast. Not really sure where that is, but they say they're going to grow the checkpoints across the state, and truckers can anticipate travel delays as they undergo routine smog checks. Isn't that great? Freight needs to be moving. The whole supply chain is clogged up, and now we get this. God, I love CARB. They're awesome. Oh boy. And they're saying this is 2 a year right now, but they're hoping to go 4 times a year eventually. Of course they are. The funny thing is Chris Shimoda, he is the vice president of the California Trucking Association. He has a great quote here. We would argue that it is way over testing because CARB's own data shows 9 out of every 10 trucks are operating the way they're supposed to. Wow. So even though 90% of the trucks out on the road are just fine and doing everything perfectly, let's step it up and nail that other 10%. Good Lord. All right, I'm done with this one. You know what, California? You get a big raspberry. Speaking of clean air, what could be better than no diesel engines at all? California is just such a bad influence. This article, New York and Massachusetts to end diesel truck sales by 2035. Yep, they're following California's lead, and also Oregon, Washington, and New Jersey. They're going to phase the sale of diesel trucks and other non-zero emissions commercial vehicles by 2035. Now, this doesn't point out if it's it just says sale of diesel trucks. It doesn't say whether used or new. Most of the time when I read these, it means that, all new trucks. But that's going to be very interesting to know if you maybe can't even buy a used truck in New York and Massachusetts, Oregon, Washington, New Jersey, and California. But, I guess that also, I don't know. Could you just cross state lines and go buy one and bring it back and register it in your state? I don't know. Good question. I guess we'll figure it out in the future when somebody gets in trouble for it, probably. Anyway, onward. Hey, what do you think of when you think of electric trucks? I don't know why. I guess it's probably just because it's the future. I always think of automated trucks. to go hand in hand with that. It's not exactly true. Automated trucks and electric trucks are two different things, but they will converge eventually. So anyway, this one I found over on freightwaves.com. This one is called Too Simple Claims Success on 80-mile driverless Class 8 pilot in Arizona. Now, Too Simple here, that's Tusimple. They are one of many companies that is, concentrate on this driverless vehicle thing. Now, this is the first trip. Apparently, it was completed on December 22nd, and it was 80 miles. It's a nighttime run on Interstate 10 in Arizona. There was no driver in the cab. That is the first time that has ever happened. Every other time there's been a driver sitting somewhere in that cab just in case. But they didn't do this, completely willy-nilly and just, hey, have at it, They were watching from, they had a survey vehicle about 5 miles ahead looking for anomalies, like construction or, weirdly marked lanes or anything like that. And there was also an oversight vehicle capable of pulling the truck over at minimal risk. It trailed the truck, and law enforcement even followed about a half mile behind for an extra layer of safety. Now, it doesn't say that the cops were holding people up back there, and I don't believe they were, because if you watch the video over here on Freight Waves, it actually shows some of the footage. It shows front camera, rear camera, and then the in cab, look pointing at the non-existent driver and the steering wheel and everything. So anyway, this says this was not, this was a kind of a typical run. It wasn't just all highway. It says it navigated surface streets, traffic signals, on-ramps, off-ramps, emergency lane vehicles, and highway lane changes in open traffic. Says it went off without a hitch, no problem whatsoever. There was no remote control or traffic intervention. Oh, so it does say here there's no traffic intervention. So that's interesting. Looks like it did pretty good too. The video actually shows that it did the 80-mile run in an hour and 20 minutes. Now, if I'm doing my math right, and let's not count on that ever. But that averages out about 60 mile an hour, and that's pretty darn good. That's pretty impressive for a automated truck, especially when you watch the first part of this video and you see how slow it was going getting out of the terminal there. But again, this was a terminal to terminal trip, but still driverless. What the heck? Now, they do warn, and say, don't panic, everybody. This is still a long ways off before this is going to be, available everywhere. They are making good ground, though. They say they surpassed 160,000 miles of driver-supervised automated freight runs for UPS. They received reservations for 100 software-equipped trucks from DHL. It's growing, but it's not there yet. They're going to continue all this testing throughout 2022, of course. And, they'll just continue testing until it's perfect, which good luck with that. But at least one trip was perfect, right? As I've said before, all it's going to take is one accident. Just one, especially if it involves some kids, like we mentioned earlier, and we're going to be starting from scratch. Well, not starting from scratch, but it will be a setback for sure. So anyway, beware of the automated trucks. They're coming for you. Speaking of automated trucks, this next one from CPR News, that's cpr.org, was pointed out to me by Sean Coit, who goes by @ChatAssassin in the Trucker Dump Slack group. Thanks, Sean. Appreciate you pointing this out. This was a really neat article. Apparently, this autonomous truck thing is not just for the road, as we probably all guessed that, autonomous trucks, a good place for them to be would be in the yards, not facing traffic, but under controlled conditions. Well, that is already taking place. There is a yard in Brighton, close to Denver. Apparently, this is just a giant warehouse that is their main test site. And, there's nothing in the warehouse. It's just, going through the motions, backing trailers into a door, and it is already doing this. It is an automated truck called the Outrider, and it is basically a yard truck that works autonomously. Now, I've always wondered, how they're, it'd be pretty easy to just go hook up and all that stuff and lift the trailer and move it and all that stuff. But what about the glad hands? I mean, for Pete's sake, I still have trouble with those glad hands sometimes if they're tight or whatever. Well, here's the way they say it works. Apparently, human over-the-road truckers drop off the semi-trailers, obviously. Then the Outrider robotic truck takes over. It's got proprietary software in it, so the human is responsible for queuing up, what trailer needs to be picked up by the tractor. Then the truck goes and drives through the yard to the location, finds it. I'm guessing it says relying on a combination of sensors. So I don't know if it's reading trailer numbers or it would make that may be the way it's doing it now. It seems like in the future it might be more smart to just, name a yard spot where it's at, and have every number labeled somehow. Not every number, every spot labeled somehow with a number. And, the human just, says, hey, go pick this trailer up in spot 74 and put it in dock 16 or whatever, something like that. But for now, it says it's using a combination of sensors. Not really sure how it's working. It says once in position, the robotic arm extends from the back of the truck. It scans the face of the trailer before connecting a pressurized air hose, which of course disengages the trailer's parking brake. Then it hooks up to the truck. After that, the truck pulls the trailer across the yard to a warehouse door, backs it in, and goes on to do the next job. This article points out that these are monotonous jobs. And yes, they are. But they are trucking jobs. And they are jobs that have you home pretty much every day. But these things can operate, without assistance 16 hours every day. It just requires, one or two humans to watch a fleet of these little trucks, and they have a kill switch. If they see anything going wrong, they can, put the kibosh on it. Apparently, I thought, well, this is new. Well, apparently not. Apparently, somewhere, how many times have I said apparently in this article? Well, apparently a lot. Anyway, this has already been used out in the public. I didn't know that, but apparently about 1,000 trailer moves have been done at a Chicago area distribution center for Georgia Pacific. Now, they are a huge paper product company, and if they latch onto this, what next? Wonder how many Georgia Pacific plants would get rid of their yard drivers. Very interesting. Of course, I don't know how much those yard drivers get paid anyway, but to many, it's worth the trade-off for being home, and they can still drive a truck and, like I say, be home every day for their family. So anyway, thanks again, Sean, for pointing out this article. It's very neat to see this. I wish there was some video on here, but there's not. There's just some photos of the Outrider truck. But anyway, check out the link. It's CPR News. That's CPR.org. And I have no idea what CPR stands for, other than, of course, keeping you alive. But I'm pretty sure that's not this website. Speaking of truck drivers and their jobs, or lack of, in the last lack of ability to get a job in the last article there, with a truck doing your job for you. Here's an article on thetruckersreport.com. Independent truck driver lobbyists blast lawmakers over workforce solutions. Well, this is a typical thing that you see all the time, that we've got this supposed 80,000 qualified CDL holders short. That's what we need in this industry, supposedly. Yet, as I mentioned before on the podcast here, apparently there's 450,000 new CDLs issued every year. So why are we short 80? Well, Todd Spencer from OIDA, the Owner-Operator Independent Driver Association, seems to have the answer here. And, just let me quote what he says here. And again, this is all regarding, the government trying to throw money at everything, which is what they do. Anyway, Mr. Spencer says, quote, What they're proposing here is using tax dollars to provide training to people that realistically will not pursue this as a career. It will be something that they will try, and many will burn out quick. If you're going to use tax dollars, somebody else's money, to make an investment in somebody, you want it to be an investment that pays off long term, and this simply won't. To use words others might, this is little more than corporate welfare. The reality is, if the job that you're offering sucks, is the solution really to go find more suckers, or should you improve the job so people will come and stay? Great quote, Mr. Spencer. And that has been the general idea behind all of this driver shortage thing is, they're starting to realize, the government is starting to realize a little bit that it's not that you can't get people interested in the job, you just can't keep them. And a lot of that has to do with, how long we're, have to stay out on the road, depending on, what company you work for and all that kind of thing. And, and when you're out there, you realize all of a sudden, hey, I'm sitting at a dock for 4 hours and I'm not getting paid for it. What the heck? I saw another article recently that talked about, of course, the number one bottleneck for truckers and the biggest waste of time is, of course, yes, shippers and receivers delaying you. What a surprise. Nobody's surprised by that at all, are they? Now, in a related article over at ccjdigital.com, that's the Commercial Carriers Journal, isn't it? Sure it is. I should know that. Yes, that is correct. Commercial Carrier Journal. Not carriers, carrier. Anyway, this one is called Why We Need to Eliminate the Overtime Exemption to the Fair Labor Standards Act to Solve the Driver Shortage. Basically, what this is saying is we are an industry that's regulated by a set of hours of service rules, but we are paid by the mile. So those two things contradict, and we got another article coming up later about safety issues when it comes to this. Are you going to move? Maybe you don't feel like you can move in the snow or something like that, but you have that incentive to keep going because if the wheels ain't turning, you ain't earning, kind of a mindset. So again, as we've spoken about before, this article goes into different ways they could fix the problem by, going to hourly, or just even when you're not driving, you're getting paid automatically something right there. So you're not so freaking panicked about not moving down the road. Now, I've spoke on here before about, I work for a union company. I work LTL, and I never realized the stress that is relieved once you're paid for your time. I remember back on the road being so freaking freaked out. I'd be at a shipper. I'd be sitting there. I'd be like, come on, we got to move, got to move, got to move, got to move. And, the evil overlord's like, shut up, And, at one point she got me a PlayStation 2 back when they were the thing, to just take my mind off of the waiting around all the time. Now, would I have worried about that as much if I were getting paid for it? Well, I can tell you no, because right now, I do get paid. If I have to, I don't deal with shippers and receivers, but I do wait on our own dock guys to get stuff loaded or city guys to come in to bring freight before I take it. And that not often, but sometimes that involves sitting around at one of our terminals, just waiting for a load to be loaded. And of course, I'm getting a decent hourly wage. I'm not getting $10-12 an hour, some crap like that. I'm getting a decent hourly wage. Now I figured up that's about 2/3 of what I'm actually getting paid to drive. So it's like, like the other night, I had a 481 mile run and they put me to bed. It's like, well, we're done with you for the day. And I was, in the past, I would panic and say, well, not panic, but I'd go 481 miles. That sucks. And I'd get kind of upset about it. Well, when you start realizing about it, the earlier you go to bed, then when my 10 hours is up, well, it's 14 for, anyway, it's complicated for the company I work for. But anyway, after a set amount of time, we go back on the clock. So if they put me to bed a little bit early, that just means I'm probably going to get some time on the clock that night. And I could tell you, that has relieved so much stress for me. So I know this would work if they would just do it. But getting everybody to do this is going to be really hard, because right now the shippers and receivers are not held responsible for delaying people. Even our terminals, well, actually, at our terminals, they kind of are, because, if we clock, an hour or 2 hours at our Indianapolis terminal, say, that company or that terminal, they don't necessarily get charged the money for it, but it kind of like goes against their record. Like, we held this driver up for 1 or 2 hours, Now, that's what they need to do with the shippers and receivers. We all know that. They need to just start saying, you're going to be held liable for it. None of this free 1 hour or 2 hours or whatever. You're going to be paying for this detention time, and you're going to be paying steeply for it. That would fix a lot of the problem. But the only way that's going to get done is either the carriers man up, woman up, whatever you want to say it, but they need to get tough and crack down and say, we're not tolerating this crap anymore. And they just won't do it. Most of them just won't do it. There's a few out there that do and will, lay down the law, but most of them still won't. They just take the abuse. And until, I hate to say it, until the government steps in and makes some kind of a rule on this, and they are looking at this. This is one of the things they're looking at, is how they can address this driver detention problem. And like I said, they really need to. That would go a long way towards fixing what is wrong with this trucking industry. As I reported earlier, this is the number one concern for drivers and their pay. And, just the job satisfaction in general sucks so bad when you're stuck just sitting there not getting paid. Well, all I have to say is my company's hiring. Come on over. Join the dark side of the union. All right. Speaking of driver shortages, let's run over to thetruckersreport.com and check out an article called White House Rolls Out Plan to Attract and Retain Truck Drivers. Apparently, the Biden administration's Supply Chain Disruptions Task Force, boy, that's a mouthful, they met recently and came up with a plan called the Truck Action Plan. This is just a plan basically to take measures to reverse the year-over-year, horrible turnover rates that the trucking industry have. And they want to try to figure out why it's happening and do something about it. And they're backing it up with, of course, lots of money. About $30 million is going to the FMCSA, that's the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration, to help this process along. They're planning on focusing on 6 key areas. The first one is marketing. They plan to do a 90-day challenge to promote registered apprenticeships. Looks like employers can sign up and benefit from the Department of Labor investing about $8 million into apprenticeships. There's already some big names on board too, like they list Volvo Trucking, DM Bowman, Yellow Corp, Florida Rock and Tank, Total Transportation, CRST, and Albertsons, just to name a few. They expect many others to follow in 2022 here. Jump on board with this apprenticeship program. They're also going to focus on veteran outreach. They say there are approximately 70,000 veterans who likely already have truck driving experience within the last 5 years, and they want to get them involved by going through the Department of Labor's Veterans Employment and Training Service and the Department of Veterans Affairs. So they're really trying to attract these veterans, and I think that would be a great addition, of course, because, hey, veterans, they've served our country, they're well disciplined, they do their jobs well. That would be a great addition. They've already been focusing on veterans for quite a while, but it looks like this is going to be stepping that up a bit more. And of course, another thing they focus on is what better is Washington, D.C. at doing than talking, right? Apparently the Department of Labor and the Department of Transportation, they plan on kicking off these listening sessions. So, key players in the industry will have will be able to talk about why they're losing drivers and why they can't get new ones and all that stuff. So basically just more talk. And of course, along with talk comes studies. Once they figure out what everybody's saying is the problem, they're going to work on studies to figure out if that actually is the issue or not. They plan to study research into hourly wages, salaries, and mileage rates and how that affects the industry and the drivers, and their whole morale. And they're also going to, I think this is a big one, they're going to focus on detention and see how that negatively impacts the supply chain. And, well, we all know it is horrible. Of course, we spoke about earlier, later, I can't remember. I'm recording this podcast out of order, so I'm not sure. But anyway, we talked about younger drivers. And, of course, they're going to focus on getting drivers 18 to 21 to, going to try to focus on them, telling them there's an opportunity to get in the industry and pursue your CDL early, so they know that you can get into interstate trucking earlier with this new Smart Drive Act thing going on. And, hopefully they will coordinate with the, with Dave Dine from the last episode with the next generation in trucking, where they're trying to reach out to, kids in school, high school, and get some vocation programs going there for truck driving in the logistics industry. That seems like a good place to put some of this money. It'll pay off in the future, not right now. A 16-year-old kid can't do anything about it. Well, actually they could. They could go get a job at a, warehouse, part-time job at the warehouse while they're in high school, and, learn how to drive a fork truck, load trucks, all that kind of stuff. So anyway, they're going to focus on the younger drivers. And the last thing they're going to look at is predatory practices. This task force plans to study unethical truck leasing practices that, cause some drivers to, really get a bad taste in their mouth when it comes to the whole industry in general. And they would just often just walk away instead of, trying a different company or giving up on the lease thing and just going to work for a company. I can tell you, I've never done over the owner-operator stuff. It's just never really, there's one point early on that it kind of interested, me and the evil overlord, but we just didn't like all the risk and all the ups and downs that went with it. And, now I talk to drivers who are lease guys or own their own trucks, and depending on what kind of trucking they do, I make more money than them, and I'm just a regular old company driver. And I'm sure that happens a lot. Actually, we've had studies on here in the past, in the news segment, that talk about how many regular truck drivers like me that have a boss, you work for a company, just a company driver, actually may bring home more money every year than a lot of these owner operators. So if you're considering it, for the freedom, great. But if you're looking at the money, perhaps give it maybe some other these higher paid companies a chance. So anyway, again, you'll find this article and all those details and exactly what they're going to be covering on thetruckersreport.com. Following right in line with that last article, let's go to overdriveonline.com, where we're going to continue talking about drivers and their happiness and all that good stuff. This one is called Operators Grade Shippers and the Results Get Surprising. Well, this is kind of a long article, lots of little graphs and stuff like that. It's very insightful, though. This comes from digital freight brokerage Convoy. They have an annual freight insight report that they put out. They say terabytes of data and 2.7 million facility rating reviews across their network. And they analyze this every year and, put out the results. Here's some of the highlights of it. Basically, they say about 35% of owner-operators expect to make more money than they did last year. About 30% expect to stay at the same level, and the rest pretty much splits between having a slower year and general uncertainty. Who knows what's going on, which doesn't surprise anyone considering the way everything's going with the supply chain and all that. This report also talks about the driver shortage and that it's really not a driver shortage at all. They have proof saying it really amounts to widespread driver underutilization. They say, although drivers typically have 11 hours of possible driving time per day, most drivers don't use more than about 7 of those. And of course, what could be causing that? Yep, detention at shippers and receivers. Now, they're saying, you use an app like, this or a service like this Convoy, and if you put in reviews, that this will help the situation because, for instance, if you go to a shipper and they take, 5 hours to unload, and then you report this into Convoy, and then they give it a rating. They assign it a rating. So anybody who uses the Convoy service is going to look at that and go, oh, well, I got 3 choices of loads. This one takes 1 hour. This one takes 3 hours, and this one takes 5 hours. This one's got a crappy rating. I think I'll go with that top rated one, So that would be a way to kind of police it from our side, instead of, like having the government step in. We'd just be like, kind of like Yelp in a way, how with food reviews and restaurant reviews, it's the users who are going in there, having a bad meal, putting a rating up there, and then the next person knows, maybe I won't go there. If it's great, they get great reviews, everybody flocks to the restaurant. That's kind of the idea of this. There's a section of this that comes from MIT's Dr. David Carell. He's a research scientist who spent the last 4 years observing and talking to 4,000 over-the-road drivers. And he told Congress in a recent session that an extra 20 minutes or so of drive time a day could effectively reverse what is considered our driver shortage. Which is ironic because another study we read recently said that about 56 minutes per day were lost by drivers just trying to find parking. So, if you're already losing 56 minutes a day trying to find parking, then, and then all this time at shippers and receivers, you can see where he's talking about how, how this study was talking about how we've got 11 hours, but we really only utilize about 7. Which, I don't know, 7 seems low to me, but then again, I've always worked for decent carriers that didn't really take that kind of abuse off of the customers, and, they wouldn't let us just sit around for hours without, getting something for it. Anyway, another thing they came away from this study was that there were about 100,000 new motor carrier authorities added just last year. So that goes along with what we said before, that there seems to be kind of a mass exodus of drivers leaving, but they're not leaving the industry. They're just leaving the fleets, and they're going to, and becoming their own owner operators. So that's cool, I guess, if that's what you're into. But now here's another interesting aspect of this study. It says what drivers really think of shipper facilities. Now, we've all shown great dissatisfaction from these places when they take so long and everything. But by and large, this report shows that 68% of live loads and 78% of drop loads basically yielded 5-star reviews. So I don't know. I get, 68% isn't great. Neither 78%. It'd be much better if it was, 80 and 90%, but, they look at that as a positive thing. I think they figure, like most of us, that it was way lower than that. They're just driver satisfaction with these places would be really low, but apparently it's not quite as bad as everybody thinks. And lastly, in here, they put 5 keys to running a great facility and getting a good rating in apps like this. The first one is service. How well do people communicate? Apparently their results show that even if the wait time or the dwell time was long, that as long as they communicated that, it yielded a much higher rating. And I totally get that. If they're just leaving you sitting around with no clue what's going on, that is bad. It just frustrates you. But if they come out and say, hey, we're a little behind, we're shorthanded or whatever, we're going to get to you in an hour, just let us know, so we can utilize our time well. So again, the first one is service. The second one is dwell time. Of course, that's the time you actually spend getting loaded or unloaded. The third is the wait times. They're judged on that for, waiting to get into a dock if you're a live load, or, even if you're one of those, dropping hooks. Hey, just run in and drop that trailer and grab the other one. It's supposed to be ready, but it's not. That's considered wait time. Amenities. It's important for, places to have restrooms for truckers, or even, lists in here that it's appreciated when they have storm shelters and stuff for them. We all remember that story at Smucker's warehouse many, many years ago. Maybe it was a factory. I don't remember, but, where there was tornadoes coming and they would not let the truck drivers in. They just left them out in their trucks. And that's just not cool. I can't imagine for the life of me why they would do that, except for maybe liability reasons. But again, that's just dumb. And the last thing listed here on, to make a great facility for truck drivers, a great shipper receiver is parking. Yeah, that actually goes into the score. If you have the ability in some place for someone to park, if there's long delays, or maybe you just want to go in the night before so you can utilize your clock better the next morning. As they're unloading you, you're not sitting there on the clock. So anyway, this is a really good article. It's a bit long, but I covered all the highlights there. But if you're really interested and you like charts and stuff, head on over to overdriveonline.com and check this out. All right, keeping on with the driver retention problem, how would you like to be a part of the solution? Overdriveonline.com. There's a writer over there named Clifford Peterson. I've spoken about him before. I always like his articles. They're always good. He's a pretty regular contributor over here. Well, he is doing some research on this driver retention, or what he's calling churn. What keeps a driver where they're at, what makes them leave, things like that. I'm not going to go into great detail on this one. You can read the article if you're interested in it, but he has an email address in this article that you can email him and tell him. He's asking one question: what are your reasons for leaving a trucking company? So that's really all he wants to know. He's just trying to figure out, what's going on, why drivers are leaving so much, and he wants to put that to good use. So if you want to be a part of that, head on over to this article on overdriveonline.com. And I will say it, since there is an email address associated with this, there is a link in the show notes. Everyone likes to save a buck or two, right? Well, if you own or lease your own truck, you're going to save more than a few bucks if you go out and buy a new Volvo VNL series with the cool D13 turbo compound engine in it. To see a cool video, head on over to volvotrucks.us or check out the link in the show notes to go directly to the video. So how much can you save? Well, the D13 TC engine is 6% more fuel efficient than their D13 models and up to 11% better than their 2015 engines. It all starts with Volvo's new wave-shaped piston design that uses fuel more efficiently. What does escape goes directly to the turbo compound unit, and that puts all that extra energy to use. I'm pretty sure there's a little brain or something in there too, because the D13 turbo compound engine is way smarter than most engines. For instance, if you're pulling a heavy load, it'll kick up the torque and use a bit more fuel. But if you're empty or going bobtail somewhere, it's just going to sip on the fuel. And that's what you want. And of course, the D13 turbo compound engine can be put in a lot of different applications, so you can get just the right situation for your truck. So if you haven't checked out the cool video yet, go to volvotrucks.us or just click a link in the show notes. I mean, come on. Everybody likes to save money on fuel, right? Easy peasy. Just go out and buy 3 or 4 Volvo VNLs. What's the problem? Thanks to Volvo Trucks for sponsoring this episode of Trucker Dump. Hey, speaking of things that would make you want to leave your job as a trucker, we've been talking about the vaccine mandate a lot lately, right? Well, as you probably know, this is another one of those times where it's just horrible when you put out a podcast so seldom. I've recorded 3 or 4 different segments along the way for this, this vaccine mandate stuff. And then lo and behold, it all ends up being irrelevant, and I wasted all that time and trashed it all. But that's beside the point. The final, well, it's not exactly final here, but let's go to overdriveonline.com. This one's called SCOTUS, that's Supreme Court of the United States, spikes Biden vaccine mandate, but issue not fully put to bed. Yeah. So, as you probably know and have probably heard by now, the Supreme Court did strike down. Well, they didn't strike it down like on a constitutional level, saying that, the government doesn't have a right to, mandate vaccines. What they did say basically is that the stay is still in order, that companies don't have to do it yet, well, they don't have to do it at all at this point, but they basically just deferred it back down to the lower courts and said, listen, OSHA doesn't have the authority to do it through this emergency temporary standard thing, this ETS. They don't have the authority to make private businesses do this. But interestingly enough, they made an exception for the healthcare industry, which was kind of weird because, well, I guess maybe the healthcare industry isn't doing it under OSHA. I don't know. I think they are. I thought the whole thing was under OSHA. Anyway, it's very interesting. Glad I'm not in the medical field. But anyway, this court ruled, the Supreme Court ruled 6-3 on this. So it was pretty decisive. Now, again, this does not completely get rid of it. What it's basically saying is, hey, take it back down to the lower courts and decide in your individual state and on an individual case-by-case basis. Now, attorney here from Fisher Phillips, corporate attorney Todd Lodgden, he says it's likely that the vaccine mandate won't come back because of this Supreme Court ruling, but it's not completely gone because it still could present problems. For instance, a private employer still, no matter what the government says, a private employer still has the right to say our employees have to be vaccinated. Now, we are very lucky in the trucking industry that I doubt there is even one trucking company out there that is just going to say you have to do this, because they, as we talked about before, they didn't want this implemented at all because they knew it would cause mass chaos, especially the large carriers. They were going to lose a lot of their drivers to smaller carriers. They don't want that. Nobody wants that. So I doubt any trucking company out there is going to do that. I wish, places like Australia would do something like this too. Got a buddy, Goose, in the Trucker Dump Slack group who lost his job over there because of this. And, well, I haven't heard from him lately, but last I heard he was out of a job. And that's just unfortunate to lose good truckers out here because of some stupid government rule that they're overreaching. Anyway, like I said, they did say this is going back down to the lower courts. The last one was the sixth. The Fifth Circuit Court had said that, hey, we're going to put a stay on this. We're going to pause on the mandate until we figure this out. And then the Sixth Circuit Court of Appeals jumped in and said, nah, you can go ahead with it. What the heck? Well, even if it goes back down to the Sixth Circuit Court at this point and they still say that they were right, that just means it goes back up to the Supreme Court, and they're probably just going to stick with the original rules, what they just said. So it doesn't look likely that this is going to come back in this way, but this article does point out that it could come back in other ways. For instance, the government's just going to, if they really want to try to push this, are going to try to go through other avenues. One of the big things with this is that this is just the presidency trying to mandate this thing through the OSHA. And, well, wouldn't a better way to do this would just make a law and say we have the right to enforce mandates when we want to? Well, they could take that through the legal system, and the lawmakers could make that happen where they say Congress has the power to do that. Let's hope that doesn't happen, but honestly, it wouldn't surprise me. But for now, we are safe on this vaccine mandate. Thank God. Hey, just as you think you've escaped the vaccine problem, yep, it still affects you if you go into Canada or are coming out of Canada, I guess. I looked on all the normal trucking sites that I look on, and I just couldn't find anything that was completely clear on this. I was getting a bit confused, so I found an outside source. I got this from CTV News in Vancouver. Vaccine mandate now in effect for cross-border truckers re-entering Canada. This first paragraph here just sums it right up, so I am going to just read it straight to you. This reads, a vaccine mandate is now in effect for cross-border truckers coming into Canada. Canadian truckers who are not fully vaccinated will have to show proof of a negative PCR test collected within 72 hours of arriving at the border and will need to quarantine after arrival, while unvaccinated American drivers will be denied entry. So there's where you go, Americans. If you're trying to get into Canada and you're unvaccinated, tough noogies, they're going to turn you around at the border. So make sure you don't go up there and waste your time. As for the Canadians, they say they will make them quarantine after they arrive, but they all say there will be fines for this if you try to do it. So, there's Americans trying to get out of Canada and Canadians trying to get back into Canada before all this happens. I don't know the exact date of when this all happened, but it's already taking place right now. Anyway, of course, we know this is going to disrupt things. As always, the Canadian Truck Alliance has said they expect between 10 to 15% of cross-border drivers could be lost, which is sad, because it's not just an American truck driver shortage. I use that word loosely. That we've got going on here. They're complaining about not enough truckers and, supply chain issues and all that stuff. Well, this isn't going to help. But anyway, just so you know, vaccine still is going to affect you if you're crossing into Canada or coming out of Canada. If you don't worry about it whatsoever. Thank God I don't go into Canada anymore. Ah, yes, one more COVID-related thing on overdriveonline.com. Apparently, the FMCSA is extending the COVID-19 emergency declaration hours of service waiver through February. Apparently, it was supposed to go... it was supposed to be done on November 30th. Wow, that was a long time ago. But podcast every 2 months. That's what happens. So anyway, this is going to be in effect through February 28th. This is the one that's good for drivers who are hauling livestock, stuff for like medical supplies for testing, or masks, or food products for grocery stores, and gasoline, fuel, diesel fuel, stuff like that. So anyway, it's the same old one that they just keep extending out over and over and over, for this deadly Omicron virus. I'm sorry. I have to say something else. I just have to. I am a little confused. If somebody can explain this to me, have at it. truckerdump@gmail.com is where you can send this. But I have read quite a few articles recently on the Omicron variant, and like I said, I'm really confused. In the same article, it talks about how the Omicron is going to be spreading fast. They're afraid it's going to be more contagious than any other variant. And then in the same, watch out, you want to be sure and get tested and all that stuff. And then in the same article, every single article, it also says it's really hard to tell the difference between a common cold and the symptoms of the Omicron. So, okay. I mean, they're saying go get checked and get tested so you know if you have the Omicron. Why? If it's just sniffles and cough and headache and things like that, and nothing else? I mean, for the most part, I think there's maybe some weird cases, but for the most part, that's the symptoms that they're reporting. And this is every single news source I've checked. Multiple different news sources say the same thing. There's barely any side effects. So, begs the question, if we quit testing, would we still have a COVID problem? Okay. I've gotten far more off into this than I wanted to, and I probably pissed some people off in the process. I apologize. I'll get back to trucking stuff. How about that? Go away, COVID. Well, here's another late one. Good God. This article's from November 5th. This one's on freightwaves.com. Congress approves a $1.2 trillion infrastructure bill. Now, this goes into some of the things that it covers. It's going to, fund under 21 truck driver provision. There's an hours of service exemption for livestock haulers. There's automatic engine braking performance requirements, underride and side underride protection, truck broker and truck dispatcher guidance, an electronic logging device data review, a truck leasing task force, a women of trucking advisory board, a motor carrier safety advisory committee or small business truckers, and a truck crash study. There's also going to be lots of stuff for planes, trains, and the ports. There's Chris Spear, who is he? The ATA director or CEO, whatever he is. ATA, American Trucking Association. Anyway, he warns us that a lot of this money is going to be doled out quickly. So he says expect a lot of new road projects in the next 3 years. Yay. Well, I guess we want construction, right? We want things to be fixed. Well, there's another article over here on the Truckers Report. What truck drivers need to know about the $1 trillion infrastructure package. This goes into some more detail on it. Apparently, $283 billion of that has been earmarked for the U.S. Department of Transportation, but only about $110 billion of that will be used to repair bridges and the type of fixing the type of infrastructure that truckers use. About $40 billion of that goes to bridges. But then they got other stuff that's not really related so much to the trucking industry, like the DOT plans to replace their fully functional gasoline and diesel fleet with electric vehicles. That's going to be about $7 billion, all for the sake of, clean. Anyway, where are they getting that electricity? From coal plants, as I've said before. But anyway, apparently, they're putting about $7.5 billion going toward electric vehicle charging stations. And weirdly enough, $65 billion is for providing internet access to tribal lands and low-income areas instead of fixing the roads and bridges. I don't really know how the DOT has anything to do with internet access. A little confused on that one for sure. But anyway, this article does say the road and bridge repair budgets are expected to increase by as much as 38%. So anyway, I guess something's better than nothing. Too bad we have to throw all this extra pork in there that has nothing related to, the DOT. Of course, I understand the infrastructure package is not just about truckers. I get that. It's about cars. It's about, I guess internet is infrastructure in a way. I guess I can see that, but Lordy, we were hoping for a little bit more. And still, as far as I know, there's nothing going towards truck parking in here. Interesting. Hey, I mentioned a second ago that the under 21 provision was part of the infrastructure package. Well, that is actually called the Drive Safe Act. And the drive part of that is all capitalized, so I'm assuming there's some clever little abbreviation thing in there or something. I'm not going to bother to look it up because I don't really care that much. But anyway, this is basically saying, that, hey, we have 18-year-olds who have CDLs and they can't cross state lines right now. And as I've spoken about many times on the podcast, that has never made a lick of sense to me whatsoever. So if they can drive within their state, why shouldn't they be able to go out of state and across state lines? Makes no sense. But anyway, here is what they're saying about it. Let me just read it to you here. It says the program requires candidates to utilize industry-leading technology, including active braking collision mitigation systems, forward-facing event recording cameras, speed limiters set at 65 mile an hour or less, and automated manual transmissions. Candidates are required to successfully progress through 2 probationary driver periods alongside an experienced driver and demonstrate competency and proficiency behind the wheel across 12 performance benchmarks. This program apparently requires young drivers to spend 240 hours supervised by an experienced driver and 400 hours of overall driving. So at least there are some standards now. Now, thank God, because as it points out here, we've had drivers who are 18, any driver really doesn't have to have school as long as they can pass the tests and, the written and the driving tests, they can drive right now. So at least there are some standards here now. Now, again, they're saying this is mainly for company drivers because apparently it's not available it's got to be implemented through a company at this point. You can't just go in as an owner operator at 18. You're going to have to wait on that. But anyway, it'll be very interesting to see how all this pans out. Of course, we're relying on the carriers to do the right thing and make sure that these drivers are trained properly and that they are not just used as team drivers to make the trainer money. We have to have driver trainers who care and want to take the time. I honestly think part of this should be, and maybe it is, but I don't know about it yet, but I hope to God that part of the requirement is that there is an experienced driver in the passenger seat at all times of that 240 hours of supervised driving, because supervised driving just really means you have to have a experienced driver in the truck with you. He could be back there, he or she could be back there passed out asleep, and just not even care. And like I said, using the driver for extra, the new driver, the student, for extra miles. And we just don't want that. Now, personally, I'm a little confused by part of this because I don't understand if a driver already has a license and he's 18 years old and he's allowed to drive in state. I don't really know why he or she, again, needs to jump through all of these hoops. I mean, they've already been driving, for Pete's sake. Just change the rule, let them get an interstate license and be eligible for that. Anyway, for Pete's sake, all the hoops and loops we got to jump through. It's freaking crazy. Anyway, you'll find that one on overdriveonline.com. Hey, I swear this is just a coincidence, but what do we have right after we talk about 18-year-olds driving interstate, across state lines? Well, we've got an article on overdriveonline.com called Fatal Crashes Involving Large Trucks at the Highest Level Since 2005. Well, I guess we really can't blame the 18-year-olds, can we? Because, well, I guess we can in state. Actually, there are some stats on this. We're talking about fatal crashes only. They're saying about 4,900 drivers of large trucks were involved in fatal accidents. 345 were between the ages of 18 and 25. 306 were between the ages of 66 and 75. But by far the largest percentage of drivers involved in fatal crashes were between the ages of 46 and 55. That's 25% of the accidents. Well, I fall in that group, at least for another couple of years. But I haven't had an accident, so I guess I'm not contributing. But the whole reason I wanted to point this article out was we've had some stories lately about drivers wondering, if e-logs are helping or not. And actually, in that infrastructure bill we just talked about, that there's part of it in there that is supposed to look at the e-log system and see if it's actually helping or hindering. Well, what does this tell you? Large trucks involved increased in 2019, highest since 2005. It's actually up a little bit more than last year, which, if you think about it, 2018 was we were still on AOBRDs. That's onboard recorders or whatever. Anyway, the previous version of what we have now for the e-logs. And that went into effect in 2019. And now the recs are higher. So are e-logs helping? Or, seems like the stricter the e-logs get, maybe there's more fatal accidents. I don't know. They're going to do lots of research on this, but ultimately you'd think, well, if it's found out that, e-logs aren't really helping things, they'll just revert it and we'll just all go back to paper. You're a funny person. No, don't ever expect that. That's never going to happen. Just give up on it. You can wish and dream. Maybe the tooth fairy will give that to you instead of a dollar bill next time you lose a tooth. I don't know, but it ain't going to happen, I don't think. Anyway, interesting little article here. Not exactly great news to know that our truck fatalities are up and have been steadily, I guess, since, 2005. Wow. Hey, how about a little evidence for what we were just talking about with those ELDs? OverdriveOnline.com. This study finds trucking accidents up after ELDs. Yep. This was a University of Arkansas study that happened and is on its way to being published in the Journal of Operations Management. It's a study that pretty much just proves everything we said, that ever since, the onboard, automatic onboard recording devices and the ELDs went into effect, the accidents has gone up since then. They said this is especially true for independent owner-operators who saw a 11.6% increase in accidents, and small fleets between 2 and 20 trucks with about a 9% increase. Honestly, this makes sense to what I've been saying all along, that, and sorry, small carriers, but small carriers have always been more likely to cheat on their logs and fudge things. And then this just goes to show that once you implement e-logs and you can't cheat them anymore, now they're trying to figure out how to make up lost time. And that is what's causing these extra accidents. And that is why it hit the owner operators and the small fleets more. Again, this doesn't surprise me. I said this a long time ago on the podcast. They did say it did affect all carriers, but it was especially nailed it for the small and medium-sized carriers. They also go on to say in here that speeding citations has gone up since the ELD mandate went into effect. And of course, speeding leads to accidents and unsafe driving. So that makes sense too. I recently sat in on a little safety meeting with one of our head honchos at our company, and he said that is where we fail very often in, with our CSA scores, our, what does that stand for? Compliance, safety, accountability, I believe. Anyway, it's the thing where your trucking company and the driver gets rated, by your safety record. Well, according to ours, the worst problem we have for the traffic violation part of our thing is speeding, which is ironic since we have slow trucks. That's what he was trying to point out. He was laughing about it. Yeah, and of course we tried to make the argument, hey, if you sped up the trucks, we wouldn't be trying to make up time in the construction zones and all the low speed limits. He'd heard that argument before. I don't think it's going to work. But anyway, it's nice to get, you put out a story and you make a comment on it. I put a segment in here, make a comment on it. And then right after that, I run across an article that's like, hey, here's some backup for what you just said. Love it. I'm so rarely right that I just love it when I can prove when I am. All right, onward. Hey, speaking of things that are coincidences, well, this might be a coincidence. I don't know. This is on overdriveonline.com. FMCSA boss nominee Mira Joshi leaving post. Yep. This Mira Joshi is she came from New York City. She was in charge of all the taxi cabs and stuff like that. And she was going to be named the next FMCSA director. And she was, basically confirmed. I mean, everybody was behind her. Even all the trucking organizations thought she was good. She was open. She was blunt the way she came at things, but she was also very open to ideas and listening, and everybody liked her. She was a shoo-in for the job, and she just up and said she's leaving. Yeah, apparently she is going back to New York City. She's been offered a position as one of the deputy mayors of operations for New York City. So, I don't know. I read another article. It's not in the show notes here, but they were talking about what a thankless job this FMCSA director can be, because there's just constant, you're always pissing off somebody, basically. I mean, you make a new rule and, it makes the truckers mad. And then you relax the rule because it's an insane rule. And then all the safety people come out and freak out on you. So you can't really win in the position, as given by, let's see if I can figure it out. It says the FMCSA hasn't had a full-time administrator since Ray Martinez back in October of 2019. The job has been held by, Jim Mullen, Wiley Deck, and Joshi, each as acting administrator. So it's been a while since they've actually had a real person in charge. Not a real person. They're all real people, but an actual person who is in that position. Interesting. Well, the Biden administration is going to go back and figure out who they're going to name next, and we'll have to go through the whole process again. Good times. Farewell, Miss Joshi. Best of luck. Really, I don't know why you'd want to stay in New York City, but I guess once a New Yorker, always a New Yorker. Anyway, Good luck. Hey, next up, I got an email from a gentleman named Joseph Ginallo. I think that's right, aka Flatbed Joe. And he was pointing me to an article called America's Ports Problem is Decades in the Making. This is from the Cato Institute at cato.org. That's cato.org. This is a fairly long read, but it's very interesting. I did read the whole article, and it's very fascinating. I'm not going to go into all the details here, but if you're interested in, this whole port problem and what caused it, it's not just a COVID problem. It's not just a driver shortage problem, because we've discussed that before. Drivers are often sitting there waiting to get in and out of there. It's not, that's not the problem. But this is, like I said, a fairly lengthy article, lots of little graphics and stuff like that. Very interesting stuff. I appreciate you there, Flatbed Joe, for pointing this out. And like I said, wow, that is really long. I'm scrolling it, but it's very detailed. So go check that out if you're interested. Again, that's at cato.org. Probably the best way to get to that is just go to the link in the show notes. What a complex problem. One of these days, we're actually going to figure it out. Maybe. I found this next one on freightwaves.com. Truckers tired of taking blame for congestion crisis at California ports. I'm not going to go into great detail here. It's just what we had talked about in the last podcast was that I kind of didn't really think that it was the truckers' fault, which a lot of people are blaming. There's a lot of blame going around with the port situation over there and all those ships back out into the ocean. People are saying it's the truck driver's fault. People are saying it's lazy crane operators. They're blaming the union, for scheduling, just all kinds of blame going around there. But, here, this article points out, they talked to a bunch of owner operators. If you're interested in what's going on out here, this is a really good article coming from the point of view of some small fleet owners and some, truckers themselves. But they're saying things like, the website will go down, and so you can't schedule an appointment. I guess everything's by appointment out there. They say they're, having to wait and sit in lines for, 6 hours just to maybe pull one container a day, where they used to average 3 or 4 turns each day. It's pretty typical. So they're not getting the production out of them. Actually, they're saying big talk everywhere across even the mainstream media now is the shortage of truckers. Well, these fleet owners are saying we've actually had to let truckers go and say, sorry, we don't have enough work for you. There's work, but they just can't get it because the ports are so stinking inefficient, Now, what's causing that just seems to be horrible management. For instance, they shipped a bunch of these ships docked at the wrong port. I don't know how you do that. Well, I guess, I don't know. I've shown up at the wrong shipper or receiver before, but, it's a little different than a port of entry, for Pete's sake. You'd think you know which one you're headed to. Anyway, all kinds of weirdness going on out there, and it just doesn't seem to be getting any better. Now, the general consensus is that, these owner operators and fleet owners think this can be fixed, but it's just going to take some major diligence and quit blaming it on the trucker all the time, So it sounds like the ports themselves just need to get their crap in gear, and the management, and get, they all need to just work together on this, or it's just never going to get any better. So anyway, like I said, not going to go into great detail on this one, but if you're interested in the crisis that's going on out there, check out, I'm not going to say it. Didn't say it. Freightwaves.com. Sticking with the topics of our messed up ports. Well, let's go to overdriveonline.com. This one is called Port Challenges and Opportunities. Is the heyday sun setting on JIT as an inventory or freight model? JIT, we spoke about this before with just in time, and it's basically the idea is don't order a bunch of crap for your business until you need it. Now, this was all based on the fact that our believe it or not, as truckers, we don't see a lot of efficiency sometimes in the industry. But in general, the world economy, the logistics part of it has been very good, rock solid. And, even President Biden in this article admitted to, well, they didn't talk to him directly, but he was quoted saying that he had a part in this, in this promoting the just-in-time system, him himself, and when he was under Biden. Obama. So, he said, hey, we were really promoting this stuff, saying we need to really rely on these efficient supply chains, and we don't have to leave a bunch of buffer or margin for error because, we're so good at this stuff. But now, kudos to President Biden for admitting he's wrong, something a lot of presidents don't do. He says, perhaps we ought to rethink this and start focusing a little bit more on building greater resilience, so basically storing up stuff a little bit. I love this one quote in here from, let's see, his name is Ryan Peterson. He is the CEO of Flexport, which is a tech platform for global logistics. He keeps track of all this stuff and runs all the numbers all the time and really watches the logistics. He says, quote, "The global logistics companies have no excess capacity. There are no reserves of chassis, no extra shipping containers, no extra yard space, no extra warehouse capacity. The brands have no extra inventory. Manufacturers have no extra components or raw materials on hand. Almost nobody has any employee loyalty because they haven't been willing to take care of their people through thick and thin of business, and thus they can't staff up quickly to meet surging demand. All businesses now complain about employee loyalty, but have we earned it?" Boy, isn't that great. Way to go, Mr. Peterson. Really enjoyed that. So anyway, not really a whole lot to report on this. This is a really long article if you're interested in this, but I just kind of wanted to, come out and say, hey, we talked in the last episode about how we might need to rethink that just-in-time thing, and that was just me saying it, but hey, this Mr. Peterson is a lot smarter than me, and he's saying it too. So let's go with what he's saying, not with what I'm saying, okay? All right. Check this one out at overdriveonline.com. All right. Next up, we're with overdriveonline.com. I'm not going to read the title to this article because it is freaking long. Okay. I'll just explain what this is all about. All right. So earlier this year, apparently, if you remember correctly, President Joe Biden requested the U.S. DOT, the Department of Transportation, to look into basically shoring up our logistics, all of transportation, and focusing on how we can be more efficient, how we can gain resiliency, and all that kind of junk. So anyway, about 400 comments were submitted between September 16th and October 18th. And DOT Secretary Pete Buttigieg is required to submit within a year of the order a report to the president, trying to figure out what we can do to help the situation. Of course, all the big players in the trucking industry weighed in on this heavily. For instance, the Owner-Operator Independent Drivers Association, the National Association of Small Trucking Companies, American Trucking Associations, and plenty of others, lots of others. This was not just trucking companies, but all kinds of transportation industries were asked to weigh in on this and see what we could do about it. So trucking groups were focused on some of the big things that we all know is a major problem. Of course, there's always the talk of shortage of truck drivers, and OOIDA has been against that for a long time. They are the Owner-Operator Independent Driver Association, which, represents a lot of owners, especially the smaller fleets. They quote in their comments here, while global supply shortages have recently forced some truckers off the road due to regulatory processing delays and difficulties finding replacement parts for faulty equipment, the current crisis is not due to a shortage of truck drivers, because the real bottlenecks in the supply chain occur at pickup and delivery points. Adding more trucks and drivers will simply make lines longer, not faster. Boy, he's spot on there. We all know as truckers, most of the delay is at these shippers and receivers. They also told the DOT that they should prioritize resolving the underlying circumstances that have led to excessive driver turnover. They say we support the administration's efforts to improve the quality of trucking jobs, but this must start with treating drivers as essential workers, which means valuing and compensating them for all of their time. Amen to that. OIDA and the ATA, the American Trucking Association, were also big on infrastructure, saying, you can't run a first world economy on a third world infrastructure system, which, well, I wouldn't go so far as to say we have a third world infrastructure system here, but it is deteriorating over time, and they, keep stealing from all the transportation funds and not fixing roads and bridges and stuff like that. And then you end up with calamities like down there on I-40 in Memphis this past year, where the bridge was down for a long time. They're saying the highway congestion itself costs trucking nearly $75 billion annually, and more than a billion hours of lost productivity. Wow, that's a lot. They blame truck parking, of course, because, well, we all know that's an issue too. The ATA, they did a study on this, and they say that time spent looking for parking costs individual truck drivers about $5,500 in direct compensation every year, with an average of 56 minutes per day given up if they choose to park early rather than, wait until the last second on their e-log and trying to find some parking down the road. Now, I think we can all attest to this. I remember from my over-the-road days that this was one of my biggest complaints. I had a series of like 5 articles all about e-logs when they first came out, and this was one of my biggies, that I have to shorten my day and lose production. So it wasn't a figment of my imagination. The ATA is backing me up on this. I'm sure they have lots of data on it because they represent all of the big fleets. And, all the big fleets were on e-logs way before they actually needed to be. So, yeah, a lot of lost production there with just the parking, So, and of course, I really don't know what happened with this infrastructure bill. Maybe there'll be an article somewhere else in this podcast. Maybe it'll be a little out of order because I am recording these as I get the articles this time, trying something new. But, so anyway, it might not flow as well. I guess we'll see. But, there may be something about that, what was actually in the infrastructure bill that passed recently. And I don't know if there was truck parking included in that or not. They were going for like $1 billion, but I kind of doubt that happened, especially when they start cutting things. All right, what else is the trucking industry asking for? Well, they want improved sleeper berth flexibility. So, the recent changes in the e-log system, e-log rules, I guess we should say, the hours of service rules, they allowed for a 7-3 hour split and a new stop the clock mechanism, so if, we talked about this before, if you have a period of off duty for more than 2 hours, you were able to extend out your 14, to 16, or if you were off duty for 4 hours, you would be able to extend that 14 up to 18 hours, that kind of a thing. Well, they're saying they would like even greater flexibility on this because it would give drivers a better opportunity to be safer and to get off the road during times of rush hour and things like that. And they're wanting the FMCSA to gather additional data on the 5 and 5 split and the 6 and 4. Those were up for debate early on, and they were, in the end, they were actually, axed and in favor of the 7 and 3, whereas before we just had 8 and 2. So they had 7 and 3. Maybe if they add 5 and 5 and 6 and 4, that would improve things and give us some more flexibility. And of course, the last thing they were talking about, well, I'm sure there's much more than this, but these are the highlights of it, is something that I really don't ever want to talk about again, but I keep having to do it. And that is the independent contractor status. Yes, this is the dreaded AB5 law from out of California. And OIDA, ATA, every organization out there in trucking hates this because it threatens the current lease operator model, the independent contractor. And boy, there's so many independent contractors in the trucking industry, isn't there? Man, just so many of them. Just keep your eyes open and you'll see. So they're just saying, hey, California is leading the way on this. Their ABC test for worker classification is freaking nuts. It's never going to pass. It's no trucker, no lease operator is ever going to be able to pass that. And they ask that the Department of Labor bring back the it was a independent contractor rule that Trump had going on. And as soon as Biden got into office, it was one of the many things he just eliminated. And apparently it's more lenient. It is more relevant to the trucking industry, and it takes certain factors more into consideration that would help the trucking industry to keep our current model. Or not every one of them, but if you're a legit lease owner operator, then you would have more of an opportunity to stay an owner operator. And, because we spoke about this before, but if California passes this AB5 law, it's going to spread like wildfire, because every state is probably going to want to implement it to get their little cut of the payroll taxes and all that good crap. So anyway, that was the last thing that they were talking about, that they just wish it would just go away. We will see about that. I mean, it's in the courts, so I don't know how the federal government can just walk in and say, nope, sorry, get rid of that. But apparently Trump was trying to do something about it, and Biden took it away. No comment. You can find this one on overdriveonline.com. All right, I admit this next article you may not give one rip about, but it is kind of important, and it's in the big picture. This one's from freightwaves.com, and it has to do with the union. Yep, low Teamster election turnout may not be what it seems. Okay, for those of you who don't know, the International Brotherhood of Teamsters, big union for the truckers, started out as the giant, thing by Jimmy Hoffa and all of that in association with the mob and, all that stuff we try to overlook. But I don't know if it's still that bad or not. But anyway, try to ignore that. But anyway, apparently there was a very low turnout for this latest election. And that's very odd, because this is the first time in, 23 years? Yep. James Hoffa was Jimmy's son. He's been the general president for 23 years, and there was finally an opportunity to get rid of him. A lot of people have been saying the Teamsters are not as strong as they used to be, and I've only been a Teamster for 3 years, so I don't really know if that's true, but it sure seems like it. There's a lot less guts. And the person who actually won, his name is Sean M. O'Brien, and he was really standing up saying that, that we want to give the Teamsters back to the rank and file and, do what they want, fight harder than they have in the past, that kind of thing. The guy he defeated was named Steve Varma. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right, but O'Brien whooped him by a solid 2-1 margin. And, apparently, they said there's about 1.4 million eligible voters, in the Teamsters, and only about 173,000 actually showed up. And that looks really bad for the union. But what they pointed out in this article, it's like the article says, it may not be what it seems, is that really the reason O'Brien won so decisively was because only Teamsters who are involved and really care are going to vote. And a lot of those were truckers, because we see that side of it, not being as strong as it used to be. So, you can say, hey, only 13 to 15%, eligible voters, cast their ballots. But, well, it was the people who really cared are the ones who voted. Quite honestly, I wish everybody would vote. But if you don't care enough to vote, I don't want your vote. Just put it plain and simple like that. That goes for the national election too, our president and all of our local stuff. If you don't care, don't vote, and don't complain about it though. Probably an unpopular opinion, but there it is. Anyway, all of the votes registered here, all the people who voted, their votes didn't count for technical reasons or whatever. But like I said, it was such a decisive victory for O'Brien that it wouldn't have mattered one lick anyway. But this contract is for 5 years, but I believe it's for 5 years. But I mean, this could set the tone for decades on down the road. If Hoffa is any indication, he was in there for 23 years, and O'Brien could be too. And like I said, he's vowed to be more combative, is what he's saying. I guess at one point O'Brien had worked for Hoffa, and he had gotten kicked off of the staff because he was too hard on UPS, and UPS didn't like him, so Hoffa got rid of him. So maybe that stands. I don't really know. I feel the word combative, a little scary, honestly. I mean, what's that mean? More strikes? I don't know. We've already seen that in this in this COVID era, how, people aren't going back to work like they used to. And they said union membership is actually up, which is a surprise, but people are not willing to settle for less. They're like, I'm not going back to work for less money. I want to make more. I'm worth more. And especially if I'm having to go back to the office, kind of a thing. So union membership is up, and, maybe this will make the Teamsters stronger again, because I can tell you they are weak in some areas. Hope I don't get kneecapped for that. Anyway, if you're interested in the union at all, check this out. If not, ignore it. You'll find that on freightwaves.com. Well, here's a fine how do you do. There's nothing better than getting fired for Christmas, right? Well, found this one on freightwaves.com. That's not really a laughable situation. I apologize. I'm going to hell. Anyway, this one is called Exclusive. Central Freight Lines to shut down after 96 years. Central Freight Lines. Yes, they are based out of Waco, Texas. They've got about 2,100 employees, and they are going belly up. Big Chapter 7. They're going to be taking care of as many people as they can, trying to get, they guarantee all their drivers are going to get paid, fully. They're going to deliver all of their freight. They're going to quit picking up freight, and have everything delivered by December 20th. That's probably that is already come and gone. It says they've got 2,100 employees. About 1,300 of those are drivers. They said there was a company that was looking at helping them out as far as buying their equipment and hiring all of their drivers. We now learned later on that was Estes who was trying to do that. I don't know how well that, what happened with that. I just saw a brief article on that. But anyway, all these employees just before Christmas shut down. Now, a couple things I gleaned from this, and it's not actually this article. It's another one. Where'd that other article go? Anyway, I'll just tell you. There was an article that pointed to what they did wrong. You're in business for 96 years, and then you just go belly up. Well, they brought in a new CEO trying to fix, the problems they were having and stuff like that. And most of their problem came from just a few errors. A couple of them being they tried to buy companies to add to their fleet. And, that never really works out. It's like having a troubled marriage and having another kid, to make things better. That usually doesn't make things better. It just complicates things. But why were they doing this? Why were they trying to add trucks and drivers? Because they were catering to Amazon. And that's the other problem they made. I guess about 30% of their business was Amazon. And when Amazon dropped them, because Amazon will drop everybody eventually because they're huge, they're getting their own transportation fleet together, as we all know. You can tell who they are because they're always parked on the shoulder of the road, making a sandwich or something like that. I don't know what they're doing. I don't know why so many of them park on the shoulder of the road, but they do. Anyway, like I say, Amazon doing their own thing. They got rid of Central here, and it just put them out of business. And, the CEO even said it was a major error, that you don't put all your eggs in one basket. Everybody's heard that saying, and that is exactly why. Big companies like that, they use and abuse you because they know they can. Even our company, we haul some Amazon stuff, and we've got trailers just sitting there with Amazon freight on them because it's cheaper for us to rent them the trailer for the day than it is for them to find warehouse space. And as I reported on a past podcast, warehouse space is getting harder to find, so prices are going up on that, I'm sure. And anyway, like I say, they just use and abuse. I remember a long time ago, I worked for another company. Probably told this story on the podcast before, but I was told to go in and get an empty to a Walmart distribution center in Bentonville, Arkansas. And I went in there and I looked at, seriously, 40 different trailers. 40 trailers that were supposed to be empty. They all had stuff on them, whether it was just old pallets they were using for storage, whether it was actual product, whatever it was. Walmart was abusing that big time. And I called my dispatcher and told him what was going on. And he said, yeah, that doesn't surprise me. They're Walmart. What are you going to do? Well, what are you going to do? Pull out. Get rid of them as a customer. But nobody's willing to do that because, hey, they're Walmart. And, hey, they're Amazon. Anyway, if most of your business, if you're an owner-operator and you're doing most of your business through Amazon, don't count on that unless you work for Amazon. Okay? Anyway, sad to see Central Freight Lines go 96 years down the tubes. Hope all these drivers get new jobs. I don't think they'll probably have any problem in this environment. They'll probably all have jobs already by the time I'm reporting this. Anyway, farewell, Central Freight Lines. Speaking of large trucking companies, let's talk about some that has better luck than Central Freight recently. FreightWaves.com has released a list of the top 500 for-hire trucking companies. And yeah, Central Freight Lines was on there. They had enough tractors to be within the top 70. But yeah, well, they're gone now. That's unfortunate. Anyway, I'll put a link to this article, and I will also put a link directly to the link of the top 500 list. So you can go over there and see if your company is, ranks it or how it ranks in here. Let me just read you the top 5. These probably won't surprise you very much. Some of them did, actually. And this, by the way, this ranking goes by just tractor count, however many tractors it has, not drivers, because depending on the type of company it is, they might need more or less tractors. For instance, an over-the-road company, every driver needs a tractor. But for an LTL company, a driver may drive that truck at night, and then during the day it's being used by a different driver. So, that kind of makes sense why some of the top ones here are LTL companies. FedEx tops the group with 36,000 tractors. UPS has a little over 30. Knight and Swift, they're combined now. They have 22.6. JB Hunt's got 19, and Yellow Corp comes in at the top 5 with 13,800 tractors. Of course, there's all the other big ones on the list on down. There's Schneider, I see XPO, Old Dominion, Werner, all on the top 10. So, like I say, just go and check this out if you're interested in this sort of thing. Impress somebody at the truck stop next time you go in there and say, hey, what company you drive for? And then when they tell you, you look it up and say, hey, did you know you're number 78 on the list? Yeah, I'm sure that'll impress them. They'll think you're pretty awesome. Either that or a giant trucking nerd. Either way, that's enough of that. Again, this one was on FreightWaves.com. Hey, truck owners, or anyone who owns a business for that matter. I don't know about you, but for me, one of the worst things about running a business is trying to get your customers to pay up. Well, Porter Freight Funding is here to rescue us. Head on over to porterfreightfunding.com/truckerdump, truckerdump's all one word, to learn how they can help you get paid quicker. Here's the way it works. You do a job for someone and hope to God they pay you quickly. Some folks do, some folks don't. Life is too short to mess with those problem children. Get them out of your life by calling Porter Freight Funding at 205-397-0934. Once you've set up an account, it's a simple 3-step process. Drop off your load, submit your paperwork to Porter, and get paid within 24 hours. There's no minimums either. Sure, you can set up an ongoing account and let Porter Freight Funding handle all your collections, but you can also just use them with your one-off pain-in-the-butt, slow-paying sons of bucks. You know who they are. They also offer other services such as brokering, dispatching, fuel cards, insurance, and compliance. So head on over to porterfreightfunding.com/truckerdump or call 205-397-0934 to find out how Porter Freight Funding can help your business succeed. Unless, of course, you just enjoy people stiffing you for your hard work. And listen, every time you use their service, it helps the show. Thanks. And thanks to Porter Freight Funding for sponsoring this episode of Trucker Dump. Okay, here's another situation where it sucks putting out a podcast, 2 months. Usually it's only a month, but boy, this has been a long one. I did warn you, by the way, last year that I may be taking it easy in November and December because it was just too hard with all of the, Christmas and Thanksgiving stuff going on. And, of course, we had those other complications I talked about. But anyway, this one is all about the Colorado driver who got sentenced, 110 years. I've included a link in the show notes to a TikTok video that explains it very quickly. I think it's two law students. I'm not sure about it. A guy and a girl. They're very pointed. They're get right to the point as to why this ended up 110-year sentence. Basically, there was 27 counts. There was 6 counts of first-degree assault, 10 counts of attempted assault, and all of these had what's called a concurrent. Anyway, I don't remember. What it basically means is that each of these sentences goes back to back, and they can't, overlap. There is a term for that also. I don't remember what that is, but there's a term for that where, all of the sentence, if you got, a 5-year sentence for something, and a 10-year sentence for something, and a 15-year sentence for something, it wouldn't add up to 45 or whatever. It would only be the 20-year or whatever the longest one was. They're concurrent as opposed to consecutive. I think that's the way that works. Anyway, watch the quick video and that will explain it a lot better. They're much more good at that kind of stuff. But anyway, that's basically what happened is he was convicted of all these different things, and the minimum sentence for each one was 10 years. So it added up to 110 years. The judge said he didn't think it was fair, but his hands were tied by the law and all that stuff. I've got an article here on thetruckersreport.com, talks about how millions of people signed a petition, like over 3 million. I think it was almost 4 million by the time it was all said and done. This petition was to reduce the truck driver's sentence. And, something came of that because, like I said, that was on thetruckersreport.com. Over here on overdriveonline.com, the Colorado governor stepped in. Now, this was going back to court. The court had decided to retry the case and look at the sentencing and see what they could do about it. I guess a lot of this, according to that TikTok video, it came down to how the prosecutor prosecuted. Basically, they could have said, we want each of these sentences to be, again, I'm going for those terms I can't think of, consecutive. No, not consecutive, concurrent. Whatever, I give up. I've been up for a long time already, and it's freezing in this hotel room because I had to turn the heat off or else you'd hear it. Anyway, they were going to look at it again and see if they could do anything about it. I think the prosecution was just going for the maximum sentence on each one because they were hoping to get him for something. And then when he got charged for lots of things, it just added up and got out of hand. So anyway, the Colorado governor did step in before it even got back to the courts, and they lightened the sentence a lot to 10 years. Now, that's a lot less. And some people would say, 4 people died in this accident and many more were injured, that perhaps 10 years is a bit light. I don't know. I'm really torn on this one because, it's been known that I couldn't find this for a long time, but I finally found an article saying it, that there was brake failure. I wasn't sure. He is an inexperienced driver. This is, let's see, what is his name? Rogel. I'm going to butcher this. Miguel Lazaro Aguilera Maderos, and he is Cuban. He's a Cuban legal immigrant. He is a legal immigrant. So good for him. Thank you. Anyway, he screwed up. I mean, but how many of us haven't screwed up? How many of us can honestly say we've never smoked the brakes on our truck? We all push it, right? There's a first time for everything. I talked to all the guys I work with, and not one of them has gone through their career without smoking brakes. You know, we got a lot of experienced drivers there, but you learn. You know, you go down a hill and you think, why are those other drivers going so fast? And I'm putting down this hill at 25. And so you try to push it a little bit and go, now I know why I'm going 25. And you hit the shoulder and let your brakes cool off. But anyway, you know, he admits he was an inexperienced driver and he freaked out, and he did. The main reason why he was convicted, of course, is, again, I don't know why I'm even telling you this because I know you know it already, but, you know, he passed some runaway truck ramps, at least one, and apparently there was some, you know, guardrails he could have went through to take himself out, you know, or grassy medians, things like that, but instead he plowed into a bunch of cars that were in a, you know, in a traffic jam, which is totally unfortunate. It was a big fiery mess. Apparently he had said he was just hoping to get to the bottom of the hill and coast, you know, go past everybody on the shoulder and just kind of ride it out until he got his brakes back. But, well, didn't turn out that way. But anyway, 10-year sentence. And they're saying, you know, because it wasn't intentional. Well, okay, I get that. It wasn't like a premeditated murder or anything like that. But he did have opportunities to get away from that situation and didn't take them. We don't know why, but anyway, all these people who got behind him, including celebrities like Kim Kardashian, who everybody knows, unfortunately, and Jason Flom, who I don't know who that is, but apparently they were in on this change.org petition too. Oh, it says here more than 5 million signed it. So clearly we think the sentence was crazy, 110 years for a young guy, you know, who screwed up. He had an accident. How many of us can say we haven't had an accident with poor judgment? It just didn't result in death. So anyway, I would be very interested in hearing your opinion on this. Please email me at truckerdump@gmail.com. And again, there are links in this to both these articles, as if you don't need them. Why am I even going to say it? I'll go ahead and tell you. They're on overdriveonline.com and thetruckersreport.com. And, of course, there's that TikTok video, and that is a long link of some gobbledygook. So if it doesn't work in the show notes, I apologize. It's a really good one, though. All right, onward. Hey, next up, we got a series of articles that should be helpful for you this coming winter. Some of you've probably already seen some bad weather out there. I think I reported in the last podcast. Maybe not. Maybe talk to somebody else about that. But according to the long-term forecast, they're saying that the lower 2/3 of the United States should be warmer than normal, less precipitation, all that stuff. But the upper third is supposed to be way colder and a lot more precipitation. So basic advice here is just try to stay out of the northern states. Although we know that's not all possible. But anyway, there's some tips here for you on, winter driving. For instance, we've got this one from overdriveonline.com called Step Up Tire Maintenance in Cold Weather for Better Traction and Tread Life. This goes on, of course, we all know that the tires get, the air pressure's off, once it gets cold. According to Rod Connor, the head of technical customer services for Continental Truck Tires in the U.S., he says tire pressure reduces 1 to 2 pounds for every 10 degrees Fahrenheit. I didn't know that. As an example, he says if a truck sits in a 60-degree shop in Wisconsin all night and the air pressure is 100 psi, but is sent out on the road and the outside temperature is 5 degrees, the temperature pressure is now only about 85 psi. So that's quite a bit of difference. Now, you don't, you want to recommend good tire pressure just, for one thing, for fuel mileage. That's for sure. But, also you want to keep that tread up, for good traction and everything. You also want to use good gauges, make sure you're using an accurate gauge, and this says if the tire is 20% below the recommended pressure, it's considered flat, basically. So, also an underinflated tire, can be, can cause extra wear and tear on the tire too. And here's something I honestly didn't know. They talk about rubber compounds. Apparently, all season and summer rubber compounds can become hard or inflexible in extreme conditions, and you really don't want that. You want that tire to be, more soft and be able to stick to the road better. And actually has a difference. I kind of heard that, but I didn't really know that for sure. That's pretty interesting. Anyway, of course, it talks about, using chains, socks, and studs. It recommends you don't really use, the spikes in the studs, because that's really bad on tires. Can damage the tires. But, make sure to keep snow chains on your truck. Of course, if you're going into the mountainous areas, because it is required by law to have them on, the truck somewhere. You don't have to install them if you're not going to drive. You just have to carry them. But there will be times, probably somewhere in your career, where you're going to have to put a chain or two on just to get out of a situation. I would advise, while the weather's still decent, get out there, put them on in dry ground. Other drivers are going to look at you like you're a nut job, but hey, just do it, because you do not want to be learning how to put on tire chains in, a foot of snow. You just don't want to do that. Okay. Again, that article was on overdriveonline.com. Now, the second article is also on overdriveonline.com, winter trucking tips that could actually save a life. Now, they talked to 3 different owner-operators here, and they kind of have different kinds of advice on this driving in the snow and stuff like that. The first one is a gentleman named Thomas Remington. He's been an owner-operator for a long dang time. And, basically he's saying to keep an eye on the tire pressure and do it when it's cold, that way you'll get an accurate reading. And he advises to keep at least one extra fuel filter in the truck. And he recommends somewhere it's warm, not in an outside toolbox, because what's the point? I mean, you want to have a fuel filter that's warm that can help keep the fuel from gelling up. And, sometimes, if the truck won't start or whatever, and you look in your fuel filter in the glass area there, or the plastic, whatever it is, and you see that it's all gelled up, you can swap that out, get a new fuel filter in there, and be on your way. Hopefully. He, of course, also says to know your terrain, and that is a big thing, of course. It's always, of course, you can't always know where you're going, because, hey, we travel to different locations sometimes. The next gentleman they talked to is named Robert Hallahan. He's a small fleet owner based out of La Crosse, Wisconsin, and apparently he was in the finalists of the Small Fleet Championship. So that's, I guess he knows his stuff. Plus, Wisconsin gets plenty of snow. We all know that, right? Well, he says his first tip is he won't hire a driver with less than 10 years experience, and he won't hire them at all if they haven't had any experience in the snow. Well, that's easy for him to do because he's a small fleet owner. A lot of big fleets can't do that. And hey, you got to get your winter driving experience somewhere, right? We all did. But anyway, he points out to, if you can, practice on the snow, a big open parking lot, something like that. If you can practice with the tractor and trailer, kind of get an idea how long it takes you to stop in certain conditions. Of course, that's not going to happen for everybody, so you just kind of have to wing it. He also says that it doesn't matter which way you're skidding, always point your steering wheel where you want to go. Yeah, I've heard that one before too. It doesn't matter, if your truck's going completely sideways, just keep your tires pointed at where you're trying to go, and hopefully it will come back around and get behind you. But it's definitely not going to if you're not doing that. But here is some of the best advice from the last 2 gentlemen, Mr. Hallahan here, and also Mr. Salmon, Salmon, might be Salmon. His name is Howard Salmon, owner-operator from Northern California. Long experience negotiating Western mountain passes, yeah, and coast-to-coast routes across the top half of the country. Yeah. Their best advice, stay out of it. Okay. Now, these are drivers with long experience saying, just don't drive in it. Just stop. Just don't go. If you think it's bad, if you start losing traction, just pull over, find a place to park, a safe place to park, not on the shoulder. You're not an Amazon Prime driver. But yeah, just get off the road, you know, and if these experienced drivers are saying it, then don't be a hot rod, you know, don't go out there and push it for the sake of pushing it, because it's going to get you eventually, you know, anybody who pushes it is going to get it eventually. So, you know, I know a lot of newer drivers feel like they're going to fail their company, or, you know, if they don't keep pushing, or if the dispatcher's pushing them, whatever. Just don't go that route. It's really not worth it. You don't have to be the macho man. You don't have to be the macho woman. Just do the job safely. Trust me, you're going to get less flack from them for pulling over and telling them you're not comfortable driving than you are wrecking a truck. You're never going to hear the end of that one. So anyway, there's more details what these three experienced drivers have to offer here. Just check out the link in the show notes there on overdriveonline.com. Now, this next one is on Commercial Carrier Journal, ccjdigital.com. Yeah, this is the one we talked about a little bit earlier. Financial incentives almost always overrule safety instincts. Yep, this is one we talked about earlier, that, you know, oftentimes you're thinking, hey, the truck isn't moving, I ain't making money, therefore I must push it. And we got to get out of that state of mind. You have to think for the future. Okay, if I wreck a truck, I may not have a job, or I'm going to have to go find another job. Or if I wreck a truck, I could die, or I could kill somebody, and then I'm in prison for 110 years. See what I'm driving at there? So, you know, it's just better to just get off the road. Safety, what this article is saying, safety often takes, you know, everybody says safety number one, but it's really not. And this is how they're talking about, you know, if you're not compensated for your time, you push it, because you're getting paid by the mile, not by sitting on the side of the road or sitting in a truck stop waiting out the snow. Just trust us older drivers that it's worth it. Just pull over if you can. Get off the road when you feel uncomfortable. I'm not saying the first side of snow, get off the road, but if you're uncomfortable, get off the road and live to fight another day. Let's just put it that way. And the last article we have is on overdriveonline.com. This is one of those excellent trucking law articles. I think I've spoken about this before. It's called Are Truckers Protected from Retaliation for Refusing to Drive in Bad Weather? This is a major concern, especially among newer drivers. Older drivers are like, you know, piss off. If you're going to fire me for not driving in bad weather, whatever, I don't care. But younger drivers, they're more fearful. They're afraid they're going to be retaliated against and all that stuff. Well, over here, you can check this out. It's a really short article because it's really all about the video. The video is 3 minutes, 13 seconds long. It's real short, but it goes in and basically just tells you, you know, what the law says about it. For instance, I can't remember what that law is. The STAA, safe. Well, of course it's safe something. Anyway, there it is. The Surface Transportation Assistance Act. It basically says you can refuse to drive when conditions are unsafe. Now, of course, there's all kind of variables in that, and, you know, it can be the type of terrain you're in, how bad the snow is, what the temperatures are, how your freight is loaded, what type of equipment you're driving. There's all kinds of conditions in there, and basically you're just going to have to, you know, this goes through a 3-step process to make sure you're doing everything right. You know, assess the situation, whether you want to drive or not, and then document it. And there's a 3rd step in there. I don't remember, but it was really good. It was a really good video, really quick, and it'd be a great resource for you to just keep handy in case you ever run across those situations where your dispatcher's trying to push you into driving in a situation where you're not comfortable driving. Don't let them push you. Don't. It ain't worth it. Hey, a while ago we talked about the infrastructure bill and how there really wasn't anything in there for truck parking. Well, it's good. We're just not relying on the federal government for that, because we got other situations that are taking place that are hopefully, relieving some of the parking situation for us truckers out there. The first here is Ohio. They plan to repurpose 2 former way stations for truck parking. One is on I-71 in Ashland County, and the other is I-76 on the eastbound side in Medina County. That's cool. If they're unused, why not use them, right? I also heard, I got a friend at the DOT who works on the road crews at DOT in Missouri, and she said that they will be closing the westbound scale soon. The new eastbound scale is almost open in Joplin, the one as you come in from Oklahoma. The new eastbound is going to be open really, really soon, and it's got a giant new inspection station back there, so yay for that. That's something I cross for my job all the time, and our bid drivers especially, they go through there every night. So good luck with that, guys. But she said the westbound will be leveled, and they're going to turn it into truck parking. Now, I have a hard time believing the westbound scale will be leveled, but that's what she said is going to happen. So I hope this is a trend that, we all see these way stations out there that go completely unused. Level those suckers. Make some truck parking out of it, right? The government already owns that property. For Pete's sake, make truck parking out of it. But it's not just our government we have to rely on. Here's 3 more articles. Wow. Love's has been really, really, really busy lately. They have added a bunch of new truck parking spaces. I'm guessing over 600 new parking spaces lately. They've got new truck stops. Let's see. We got one in Montana, Great Falls, Montana. It's got 56 truck parking spaces. Chester's Chicken, Godfather's Pizza, and Subway. 5 diesel bays, 4 showers, and more. There's one in Drayton, North Dakota that has 63 truck parking spaces at Taco John's. Yay, love Taco John's. 6 diesel bays, 4 showers. There's a location in Pacific Junction, Iowa that has 84 parking spaces, a Subway, 6 bays, 5 showers. And there's a new store in Dalhart, Texas, home of lots of stinky cattle. And that one's got 77 truck parking spaces. Chester's Chicken, Godfather's Pizza, 5 bays, and 4 showers. So all those fairly small, but it adds up to over 280 parking spaces. That's pretty cool. But guess what? They aren't done. There's an additional 300 parking spaces at 3 other locations. Holy mackerel. The first is in Bellefontaine, Ohio, 126 truck parking spaces. That's a big one. That's got a Hardee's restaurant in it, 8 fuel bays and 8 showers. That one opened on December the 6th. There's a new Florida store in Milton, Florida, 88 truck parking spaces. Arby's, that one opened in November. It's got 8 bays and 8 showers, and it's even got a Speedco, so that's cool. And there's a new Georgia location, Garden City, Georgia. That is 97 truck parking spaces. Hardee's opened in November, 8 fuel bays and 6 showers. All of this information can be found at overdriveonline.com in 3 separate articles, or you probably should just download the Love's app, right? It's called My Rewards Love app, I think is what it's called. Let me look real fast on my phone. Yeah, it just says Love's on it. I don't remember what's called now. But anyway, it's pretty apparent. You'll see the big giant yellow icon and the big red heart on it. So anyway, boy, they have been really busy lately, but guess what? They're not done. No, they're not. There's another location that went up. I was actually at this one recently. This one is in Bates City, Missouri. It's on I-70. It's got 107 truck parking spaces. It's got a Chester's Chicken, Godfather's Pizza, Subway, 8 diesel bays, 7 showers. and all that good stuff. It says it's the 19th location to open in Missouri, which isn't surprising because, Loves is based out of Oklahoma, right next to Missouri. So, of course, we have a lot of them. But, man, oh, man. One thing I experienced when I was at the Missouri location, Bates City, is that sometimes, don't get me wrong, I'm really grateful that Loves puts up all these truck stops, but sometimes I don't know who designs them. The parking lots have so much unused space. They're just wide open spaces where trucks can park willy-nilly. There's no markings for parking or anything like that. Go to this one in Missouri. There's a huge space before the bays, which, fine, you can line up 2 or 3 deep, whatever. But after, you could park 4 trucks back to back out in front of those fuel bays. And it's used for nothing else. And if you go out to the side of the fuel bay, there's a huge area that could have more truck parking. I just don't understand it. It's the same way with the one up in, Hampshire, Illinois on I-90, just west of Chicago. That one's got a lot of unused space in it. And then there's the one south of Terre Haute that is very much like that, got a huge open space behind before you go into the fuel bays that could be used for something. I just don't know who's the architect designing the parking lots. The stores are laid out pretty well. Like the deli, the coffee, all that good stuff. Everything's laid out nicely, but those parking lots are a freaking mess. Loves, you have somebody look at that because you've got a lot of unused space. I mean, we've added, like I said, almost 600 parking spaces here, probably more than that. And they could probably have easily 700, if not 800, with all the wasted space. But anyway, beggars can't be choosers, right? I'm not the one building these places. I'm not the one putting all the money into them. So a big thank you to Loves for doing that. And hey, Loves, got some ad spots open. If you're interested, just saying. Well, that is going to do it for the news right now. There might be more, but I don't care because I got to get this episode out sometime. I'm probably about a week behind on the news. But anyway, boy, this schedule, even a month, I normally put out one per month and I'm so far behind on news that it's just impossible to do. I've been thinking about this a lot. Let me get your thoughts on this. I've mentioned this before. I'm thinking about spinning the news off into its own podcast. Yeah, now I know that seems like more work to put out 2 podcasts. Still do the trucker dump and then do the trucking news thing also. But here's kind of my thought on that. Okay. Right now I get really overwhelmed with this because how I do it is I see a news article and I save the link. I read it, see if it's relevant, if I want to talk about it, if I have anything interesting to say about it. Well, that's debatable all the time, isn't it? Anyway, yeah, I decide whether I want to report on the story in the news segment. And if I do, I save the link in a note, and then I save the title of the article in a note, and then I just set it aside until I'm ready to record the podcast, which, like I said, can sometimes be 3-4 weeks later. And in this case, about 2.5 months later, I think it is. So all these things are just accumulating. So then when I go back to re-record or to record all this stuff, well, I've already forgotten what that story was about because it was a month ago. And I got to reread the story again, figure out what I got to say, and then I go and record it. So my thought is, what if I just did this like not once a day? It'd be a weekly podcast is what I'm thinking. I'm thinking, read the news for the day. When I get to the hotel room, at the end of my shift, just walk in there, whip my microphone out real fast, get exactly what I want down, edit it real fast, set it off to the side, and then just, at the end of the week, I've got, say 10, 15 clips, something like that. Just slap them all up there. They're already recorded. They're already edited. Slap on a really simple intro, really simple outro, maybe some ads if I have ads. Not decided on that yet either. But, have those pre-recorded this time, not, try to do anything on the fly, just some really short ads because it'll be a shorter podcast. Not these 2-3 minute ads I do now, but, just some like 30 seconds or a minute ad, something like that. And actually, what I'd really love to do is keep the podcast, if I do this again, I'd really love to have it sponsored by you, the membership. But I know that's never going to happen. I'd like to do like maybe $40-$50 a year for the weekly podcast to keep it ad free. But I know from experience, I know from listening to lots of podcast gurus that basically only about 1% of your viewers listeners in this case, will subscribe to something like that. And that is just not enough money to bother with it. Honestly, I would make probably much more money. Well, no doubt, probably until I get my viewer count way up, which I wouldn't have any viewers in the beginning of this podcast. Of course, I keep saying viewers, your listeners. What am I thinking? Anyway, yeah, there's just no way that a membership thing right now would trump the ad model. Just no way. So I'm thinking that would be a way to really support the podcast. I make decent money per ad, but it comes out to be a really small amount when you only put out one podcast every month. And, if I skip, like I did this time, there's about 10 podcasts a year, which that ain't much, so barely keeping afloat here. But anyway, what are your thoughts on this? Would you be interested in me spinning this off into a separate podcast? Would you subscribe to it? Would you listen to it? I know from my survey that some people really enjoy this segment, and some people really hate the news segment. So, well, I wouldn't say anybody hated it, but some people could do without it. So anyway, just please share your thoughts with me on this. I know probably somebody's going to write in and say, hey, it's your podcast, do what you want with it. And I appreciate those thoughts, but I would like to get your opinion on it and what you think of spinning that part off. It would make both all of the weekly podcast shorter because it's just news, and also it would make the Trucker Dump podcast shorter also because I wouldn't have the news segment in there. But, ultimately it would be the same amount of content, just actually it might be a little bit more content because if I was doing a weekly news, I might include a few more news stories than I do when I'm being really selective, because I'm putting together a podcast that's going to last 4 freaking hours. You got to be very selective when you're news, when you're doing that. So anyway, like I said, share your thoughts with me, please. My email address is truckerdump@gmail.com. So with that, let's get on with some trucker grub.
Give us a bottle of your finest champagne, 5 shrimp cocktails, and some bread for my brother.
What's that?
Sushi.
Sushi?
Boy, some chicken wings have really hit the spot.
This is a tasty burger.
Don't play with your food, eat it.
Some people are just cooler than other people. There's no way around it. One of those people is Bruce Phelps. Now, why is Bruce so freaking cool? Well, I can tell you, because he's a brand new listener, and he's already sent me not 1, but 2 audio comments. And one of them is a Trucker Grub segment. So like I said, cool. What do you got for us, Bruce?
Hey, Trucker Dump. Todd, Bruce Phelps again. Been hesitating on this. I want to tell you, when you're talking about your dinner places, good places to eat for truck drivers, I'm not sure how many people knows about Patty's Diner in Tennessee. I know it's on I-40. I know it's exit 108. You go south on 22, not even eighth of a mile, and you turn left right behind or past a dollar store. You circle around, park in front of Patty's. There's probably room for, I would say, a minimum 8 truck and trailers. It's a pretty decent room. Patty's is awesome. Price is good. Country cooking, buffet. I mean, good country cooking. Okay, it might not be called Patty's Diner, but it's Patty's something or other. Y'all check it out. Let me know how wrong I was. I do know it's 108. I know it's South I-40. Ooh-wee. My job right now doesn't take me that way, but I look forward to the day I get to drop in on them. Have a good day. Thank you, Trucker Dump.
Well, doggies. Yeah, Bruce, I looked it up. You were very, very close. Patty's Diner? Nope. Patty's Restaurant. But it just says Patty's right here. I think it just says Patty's on the sign. It says Authentic Southern Eatery, and you look at the photos. Boy, that breakfast looks real freaking good. Oh, man, all the food on here looks really good. I put a link in the show notes to the Patty's Restaurant website, and you can click on the Facebook link there, and it will send you for more photos and stuff. Anyway, man, this looks really good. It's cool. They got truck parking. It even says they have sandwiches, milkshakes, and funnel cakes. What the heck? A restaurant serving funnel cakes? Man, I'm down with that. And of course, Bruce, you're a trucker, so you nailed the location. It is I-40, exit 108, just south of I-40. And that is in Wildersville, Tennessee. You know, Bruce said that he hadn't had a chance to get there in quite a while, and he was kind of not happy about that. Well, he put in the Trucker Dump Slack group the other day that his brother got in there and was, kind of rubbing it in. And, because that's what brothers do, right? But he was pretty jealous of his brother for getting into Patty's, and I don't blame him. Bruce, you had me at buffet. All right. Thanks a lot, Bruce. And hey, if you want to be cool like Bruce, send me a Trucker Grub segment, your favorite restaurant that you can get to in a truck. Give me the location, truck parking. Even if it's somewhere close, you can park and walk to it. That'll work. Give me the atmosphere of the place. Give me what they have on their menu, the type of food it is. Tell me what your favorite meal is. Or if you got multiple meals, how about some prices? All that kind of good stuff. 3 minutes or less will do, and you can just talk right into the voice memo app on your phone and send it off to truckerdump@gmail.com. And again, thanks to Bruce for cluing us into Patty's Restaurant in Wildersville, Tennessee. Good.
Hey, yo, bud, where do you want this load of feedback?
All right, if you've written to truckerdump@gmail.com recently and still haven't heard your comment on the show, well, just hang on. I'm trying to catch up. Remember, the 2-month thing, right? Get a little behind. So let's get cracking here. And what better way to start the feedback segment than with a bunch of people telling me I screwed up? Yep. Par for the course, right? First up, we got Matt McKellar. He goes by @MountainMan in the Trucker Dump Slack group. And he writes, just a heads up that the pop-up on your website still says the combo ebook pack is available for $9.99, but when you go to pay for it, it's $14.99. Oopsie. I bought them anyway to support your work and because they seem worthwhile, but just an FYI. I'm looking to transition to a trucking career in the next few months, and I recently found your podcast. I find it enjoyable and helpful, so thank you. I'm looking forward to reading your books. Take care, Matt McKellar. Well, to give you an idea how far I am behind, Matt, he wrote this back in October, and as we speak, he is a trucker. Yeah, he went through trucking school already, and he is in the training process right now. Good times, Matt. He was talking about that in the Trucker Dump Slack group the other day. Yes, it can be a bit frustrating to have a trainer, to be locked in a semi with somebody for a long time. Yeah, I get it. I totally get it. We've all been there. Well, not all of us, but most of us have been there and done that. No fun. But anyway, Matt, thank you for pointing out this snafu on the website. I think actually I had changed the price, but I didn't change anything else, including the pop-up. I think even the graphics still showed the, marked out price, and it was like $9.99 or something. Oops. I fixed it all. Thanks for the heads up on that. After I wrote back to Matt and apologized to him, he wrote me back and said, "No worries, it's all good. I'm really enjoying the book so far. Lots of good info about what things are like as a trucker. Also, the recent first 6 months on the job podcast episodes were great for that too. An open-ended discussion that fills in a lot of the blanks about daily life on the job." Yep, thanks to Smackerman for that 2-part episode. That was a doozy. I'll put a link in the show notes to that, by the way. And since I mentioned Slack earlier, Matt is a member of the Slack group. He has to join. He's been asking lots of questions in there about the trucking industry in general. And like I said, it's great for newbies, especially because we got a bunch of people in there who want to answer questions and don't want to just be smart aleck. Well, don't get me wrong. We are smart aleck in there, but we do answer your questions. You know, you're not going to get a bunch of trolls on Facebook just telling you you're stupid. Okay. If you're asking a question, it's for a reason, because you don't know the freaking answer. All right. Anyway, Matt also pointed out to me in the Trucker Dump Slack group that, you know, a few episodes I was making I don't know. I was trying to say what Michigans call themselves, you know, like different people in different states have different words for themselves, and I didn't know what it was, so I was making stuff up. And Matt wrote in to inform me that people from Michigan are called Michiganders. Had no idea, but thank you for letting me know on that, Matt. Wow, 2 corrections in 1 segment. How you like that? Oh, but we're not done. So, as I said, a bunch of corrections today. The first, of course, was Matt with the pricing issue there. But now I got 3 more, all telling me about my website being down. Yeah. First up, let's hear from Nicholas Murphy. He says, "Hello, my name is," yes, you guessed it, Nicholas Murphy. "I've been listening to all your podcasts at work the last few weeks. I'm at Trucker Dump 142 on the Google Podcast app. I paused it and tried going back to it, and it keeps saying I can't play back. All other podcasts work, but yours. Your website link doesn't work, and I've tried listening on other apps and means. Thanks for the response in advance." He goes on and says, "P.S. I got my Class B CDL permit and about to start on with a local dump truck company. Already thinking of getting my Class A at some point, but maybe later in life when my kids are older. God bless you, brother, in brotherly love, Nicholas Murphy." Well, Nick, as you now know from my response to your email, yes, the website was down for a while, and, well, quite frankly, it was a little while before anyone even noticed, which tells me how actively people are downloading the podcast. Yeah, it's like nobody noticed for a long time, and I just kept thinking, I'll get this fixed before anybody notices. But nope, at least 3 people, and probably more. These are the ones I remember. Anyway. What had happened, basically, I got hacked. Now, nobody's got any credit card information or anything on, or even addresses or anything on my website. So it was just injecting some malware for ads and stuff like that. And, it's all cleared up, caught. Nothing was, nothing went out to the public or anything like that. So no worries there. So like I said, I did respond to Nick, and, he wrote back and said, "I know how you run, man. And since last summer, I've been listening from the beginning. Almost done and love your podcast. I work currently in the lawn care service professionally. I've been doing it for years, and I've been wanting to get into trucking, dump trucks specifically. Over the seasonal layoff, I got my Class B CDL permit, and then my contact flaked on me. So now I got my permit for this guy who needed me, and still I want to follow this long-time childhood dream. What do you think I should do? And I'd love prayers in this respect. I have a growing family and want what's best." Yeah, growing family, I think you're probably going down the right path. If you don't want to hit the open road, don't. You can still have a pretty good career as a truck driver, driving a concrete truck, or, a local dump truck, or, a trash truck, or there's, it pays better than, McDonald's, Walmart. Well, not always, but sometimes it does, depending on your location and everything. But yeah, if you got a growing family, young family especially, and you don't want to miss that stuff, over the road trucking is probably not the best idea, Now, if you need to do it to make ends meet with your family and everything, then, you wouldn't be the first trucker that ever had to do that. So, I'm not going to say don't do it. I'm just going to say if you've got an option, do something locally and, keep it close to your family. That's what I would do. Thankfully, I didn't have any dang kids. So, me and the overlord just hit the open road and went for the big bucks. For the record, you will make more money over the road or possibly an LTL job. Honestly, if I wanted a true trucking job right now, I'd go with LTL. They're all hiring. That's less than truckload, by the way. The carriers like FedEx, UPS, Yellow, Holland, Estes, Saia, R&L, lots of companies like that. Anyway, just do a search for on Google for LTL companies, LTL trucking companies, and you'll come up with a whole list. So anyway, Nicholas, thank you for the heads up on the website being down. I appreciate it. And I think you might have been the first one to reach out to me to let me know. So I really appreciate that. Next up, Keith Butler writes from Canada. He says, hey, haven't been able to download the most recent episode 158. Error 409. Too many requests. Not sure if it's an issue on your end or with Podcast Addict, which is a podcast app for Android. Good one, too. He said, I sent a screenshot as well. Yes, you did. He says, love the podcast. He continues, a statement for you, followed by a question I asked the know-it-alls. I've only been doing this since 2001. Are you calling me a know-it-all, Keith? What the heck? He says, as a middle-aged fart with 20 plus years left of working ahead of me, I have this fantasy of not working forever. Yeah, it's a good fantasy to have. He says, I don't think companies do enough to retain their current drivers like me. While I make a decent wage, there's very little incentive for me to stay at a company, and with sign-on bonuses, I can make more changing employers every 6 months to a year. I've been at my company for 3+ years and I'm mostly happy, but I keep wanting pension or RPSP matching. What's that? Must be like a 401k up there in Canada. Anyway, and extended family, medical, dental plans, escalating pay, and holiday plans. This seems to be the stuff of large and or union companies. Yep. Do you see most companies ever changing their ways to retain employees, or is a revolving door the way it always will be? What do you see needs to change to attract new young drivers? How do you see the industry changing with increased living expenses and operating expenses? Do you see wages increasing significantly soon, or is this industry going to bust? What changes do you think will happen in the industry in the next few years? I don't see electric trucks happening for a long haul anytime soon, as the truck stop would need their own power plants to charge all the trucks overnight quickly, and where it is cool and dark in the winter, the battery draws just for lights and heat become astronomical. Agreed. Anyways, I live just across the U.S. border in British Columbia, Canada, within sight of Mount Baker. We've had 3 massive rainstorms that caused massive flooding and at one point damaged all the highways away from the coast and the rest of our province and country, except for going through the state of Washington. Some of our highways are months away from being rebuilt, and some of the highways have large sections where the rivers literally carved miles of land and highways away. Wow. The only current highway open for commercial traffic detours along the border and adds about 100 miles of mostly single-lane mountain highway along the Canadian-U.S. border. I've sat in traffic for up to 8 hours, for which should have been less than 3 hours. It sucks when you're paid by the mile. Yes, it does, Keith. He says, anyway, Merry Christmas, Todd, the evil overlord, and the nephews, and all the others. He says, I drive flatbed, hauling mostly oversized freight from the ports around Vancouver, BC to Canada and the U.S. Man, driving flat deck, oversized freight on tiny little roads with all of these detours. Doesn't sound like much fun there, Keith. I don't envy you. I hope that's fixed by now. It probably isn't fixed that quick. This was written back in December 6th. So anyway, Keith, you asked a heck of a lot of questions, don't you? Well, Keith, let me see if I can answer some of these questions real quick. This could honestly fill up a whole nother podcast probably, so I'll try to make it quick. you talk about all the holiday plans, medical, dental plans, stuff like that. Yeah, that is a large company or union, specifically down here in the U.S. I don't pay anything for my insurance premiums. The union pays for that. I do pay my union dues, but the union pays for that. And trust me, it is not one of these cheap plans. This is a awesome plan. Every place we go, they always say, man, I've never seen insurance like this before. So there's that. Do you see most companies ever changing their ways to retain employees? Sure. They're already doing it. They're trying all different ways, like you say, the sign-on bonuses are to attract new drivers. To retain employees, I've had recent stories here on the podcast where they're trying to figure out ways to do that, ways like, it's not all about the pay. It's about the way you're treated. Are you treated like somebody that they respect, or are you treated like a piece of dirt that can be replaced tomorrow? Those kind of things. I read an article recently that I think it was Prime Incorporated, not Amazon Prime, but Prime Incorporated, has added luxury driver terminals, driver rooms at their terminals, basketball courts and weight rooms and saunas and, those kind of things. Well, for one, it can keep their drivers out a little bit longer because they might want to stop in there, and stay instead of, going home or going to a hotel or whatever. So, keeps those drivers engaged and wanting to work for that company. So, yeah, and they're, of course, raising pay everywhere. They're adding different bonuses and just they're doing this guaranteed pay thing. That's an incentive to stick where you're at. A guaranteed minimum pay per week. That's attractive. So they're definitely trying something. And, like I talked earlier in the podcast, President Biden's got that truck, whatever they call it, that special thing that they're working on, trying to get drivers in the industry and retain them. I do see how it is very frustrating, though, with, you talked about, how you could be better off just going from place to place with these bonuses. I will say be careful of that, because these sign-on bonuses are often paid out over a year or something. So you probably couldn't just change every 6 months. Sometimes they're paid over a year or even longer. Sometimes they're paid up front, but I don't know. I don't even think job hopping in this industry right now would matter one bit. They're not going to look down on you for that. But, I just wouldn't recommend chasing the sign-on bonus. It is a little sad, though, that they couldn't give, the current employees. Why are they offering, a $10,000 bonus to somebody coming in, but, the guy who's worked there for 20 years doesn't get squat? I don't know. It's a little frustrating, I got to say. But I get it. They got to do what they got to do. You ask, what do you see needs to change to attract new young drivers? I think they need more technology in the trucks. Unfortunately, none of the old timers want that, but they're going to want fancier trucks, more amenities, nicer truck stops. Like I said, what Prime's doing with their driver terminals, making them nicer. I also think that they're going to need to just make more regional runs, more local runs where you're out and back that same night. Maybe you're relaying with another driver every night, like a FedEx or UPS does that kind of thing for their long haul stuff. A lot of it, not all of it, but a lot of it. Just, two UPS drivers meeting out in the middle of nowhere, swapping trailers and going right back where they came from. That kind of thing would really help, because I don't think the younger people nowadays, I don't think they want to give up their whole lives, especially their social life, like the older drivers did. They sacrificed that, for the sake of the job and for supporting their families. But as we're learning from this new environment, with the job market the way it is, and, companies can't find enough employees as is, that employees are just not willing to work for peanuts, and they want conditions to be good for them. Call that snowflakey, call that millennials, call that whatever you want. It's the facts, and not every young person is that way, but there are a lot of them that just want things to be better than what, you and I went through. And quite honestly, I didn't go through it all that bad myself. You know, I came in the late 90s and most of this stuff was kind of worked out. We still had some crappy showers and stuff like that, but you go into showers now in these truck stops and they look like a hotel room, you know, very clean most of the time. Very clean, except for that one big glob of hair in the sink, but you get the drift. You ask how the industry is changing with living expenses, operating expenses. I don't know enough about all that stuff to really comment on that, but you did ask about wage increases, and you said, are they going to increase significantly soon? Yeah, they're already doing that. It seems like every time I open up my, news feeds for the trucking, they're announcing some other trucking company is raising their pay. I don't always report on that because, it affects so few people, but yeah, that's happening a lot. They say that, for the first time, the average driver can make over, $70,000 in a year. And that's been a long time coming. For a long time, it was, closer around 45, 50 if you were lucky. But I mean, you can come into this industry and a new driver and make a pretty darn good living, a lot better than somebody studying, women's studies at the local college and getting their degree. What changes are going to happen in the industry in the next few years? Again, I think we're going to go with more regional stuff, lots of turns and slips and stuff like that to get drivers home more often. I think we're going to continue to see this automation come in. I think there'll be more and more automated, but I don't expect fully automated trucks for quite a few years because there's just too many complications with it. So yeah, you'll have a job as a truck driver. I would have no concern about that. Over time, yes, as one podcaster I listen to says, over an infinite time scale, of course there's going to be change, but yeah, not for a while on the fully autonomous trucks. But yes, you will hop in a truck, here in a few years probably, and it will want to steer down the road for you, which honestly, I'm okay with. We'll see when it gets there, see how good it works. Electric trucks. Yeah, that's going to be a long time too. Right now, most of the companies are saying they're really only interested in electric trucks for local stuff like local UPS deliveries, FedEx deliveries. If you're just driving a trash truck around, anything that's local has the potential to be electric, because you got to charge that thing overnight. And like you said, the infrastructure just is not there at a truck stop. And it would cost a fortune to put it in, and it would cost a fortune to run it, unless they start charging for electricity, and nobody wants that. So Keith, I guess that didn't really go super quick, but since I didn't answer all these questions in an email, I thought I'd give you some time there. Anyway, thank you, Keith, for letting me know about the website being down and for, writing in and tell me a little bit about yourself, what's going on. I always like to hear from listeners and find out what's going on in their world. Next up, we're going to hear from Jack Rickelman. He says, I have been listening to the show since last year and getting close to finally getting up to date on all the episodes. Yes, I am that person who has to listen to all the episodes of a newly discovered podcast in chronological order. I really enjoyed listening to the podcast evolution and yours and the community you've created around it. I am having an issue though, and maybe it isn't just me, but I haven't seen or heard anything else about it. I cannot download any episodes. It says download failed, server error. I've tried on Overcast and Apple Podcasts. I also went to abouttruckdriving.com and saw that the website was down. I'd assume that's why the podcast won't play either. Yes, you are correct. He says, is there any resolution coming to this in the near future? I hope you're okay. This doesn't mean you've come across tough times or fighting with the website hosting gods again. Well, bing, ding, 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 ding. You pegged it. Not so much the web host. It wasn't really their fault. I don't really know how it got in there. I did have some old updated stuff that was kind of updated, or not outdated, I should say. And they're guessing that's the way it got in there. But I have secured, much to my chagrin, it cost a lot, but I have secured a security company to, watch the website all year long. So, by the way, I need money for that. So anybody interested, I take donations. You can buy the books, whatever, send me a giant check. I'll give you my personal address if you're going to send me a mega check. I'm okay with that. All right. Anyway, I'm just messing with y'all. Not really. Anyway, as I said, the website is up and running. I believe I got it running on December the 24th, I believe is when it finally got kicked in. So I can't remember which one of you thanked me for the Christmas gift. My podcast is a Christmas gift. Great. Oh, it was Jack who responded to this. He said he's looking through his podcast yesterday and noticed my Trucker Dump episode had been downloaded. Nice. Well, you're welcome. Merry Christmas, Jack. Next up, we're going to hear from old friend of the show, Andrew Farmer. No, I'm not calling Andrew old. He's younger than me, but he's been with the Trucker Dump podcast for a long time, and he's not even a trucker. So how cool is that? Hey, Andrew, how's it going? He writes, "Hey man, how you been? Pretty good here. Actually been doing well. I've worked the whole time during all this mess. We were able to manage it. Finally took a little getaway back in May. Going to take another getaway next month. Going to go spend a couple days in Athens, Georgia and see the band Cracker." Too bad you can't see somebody else from Athens. REM, maybe B-52s, maybe both. Anyway, sounds like it's a good place to see bands. He says, "I'm only living 1 hour, 20 minutes from Athens. Never been there. I got to listen to Trucker Dump 155. Yes, more trucking news." Most of it, that was a little longer podcast at almost 2.5 hours. Yeah, that's been happening a lot lately, Andrew. He says, "Interesting about your experience with the BMW." I wrote that I mentioned that I had driven a BMW to a trucker training class, to a safety trainer class, and it was an interesting experience, but not as interesting as Andrew's. He writes, "One of our wine reps, he's works at a restaurant. He's a cook. He says he's a chef. Sorry about that, Andrew. I don't know if there's a difference in your mind, but he's a chef." Anyway, he writes, "One of our wine reps took us to BMW in Greenville, South Carolina back in 2018 to do the driving experience. It was one of the coolest things I've experienced involving automobiles. We got to drive 6 or 7 vehicles from sports, family, SUVs, all BMWs. You sit through a class, they feed you lunch, tour a little bit, etc. Without saying it, they basically tell you to drive these cars like you stole them. I've never been a fast driver. I got my only speeding ticket 22 years ago. It was a little intimidating. It's hard to flip that switch when you drive a car like Dale Earnhardt and the consequences of you being behind the wheel doesn't matter. But the technology and braking and handling in those cars is unbelievable. They say let them know when you're ready to go again. And if you're close by, I would take you and let you experience that." Ooh, cool. He goes on and says, "Man, that would be awesome. I'd like to go. Oh, man, too bad I hardly ever get to South Carolina anymore." Anyway, he goes on and says, "Played a little golf this year, but it's just about been too hot to even check the mailbox without breaking a sweat." I hear you. How about you? Anything new? I know you talked a little about your company you're driving for. Yeah, I talk a lot about them without revealing their name. He says, "Hope to hear from you soon. Take care." Well, Andrew, it sounds like your life is a lot more interesting than mine. It's pretty much the same old for me, driving a truck during the week, about 36, 40 hours off on the weekend. Haven't been doing anything recently, a lot due to the COVID and stuff like that. Just, staying in more. Although, honestly, it didn't really affect us that much because we never really got out much. Our idea of a good time is just sitting at home on the couch with the cat playing Lego video games, on PlayStation. Now, I would really like to do that BMW experience, so that would be really cool. But it probably would have gotten me in trouble. Like I said, I caught myself going like 84 mile an hour in that BMW 330. And, it didn't even feel like I was hardly speeding at all. Oh, man, I can't imagine how fast I'd be going on a track, especially if I was told to drive it like I stole it. Woo! I'd like to, try it though. It'd be fun, wouldn't it? As for golf, I've got coworkers that play a lot and I've been meaning to get back into it. But, I just got so little weekend home time. It's hard to justify 4 hours to go play golf, after being gone all week. Plus there's the podcast that always takes a million years to do each one of them. So, all that stuff going on. Oh, well, anyway, glad to hear you're going to get to see a concert. Personally, I'm too old for that crap anymore. Don't care anything about seeing anybody live. There's just too many people there, and people are annoying. So I don't want to do that. Neither does the evil overlord. Hence the video games. So anyway, Andrew, thank you for writing in. I appreciate you being a long-time listener. Keep that good food coming to all the people who come to your restaurant. Next up, let's hear from longtime listener and friend of the show, driver Dave. You know, if I had to take a guess, I would bet I've read more driver Dave emails on listener feedback than anybody else. Too bad I'm too lazy to go back and add them all up. Anyway, Dave writes, "Hello, Todd. Glad to see you have another episode out." Yeah, this was back in August, so yeah. He says, "I'm using Geotab on the company phone for e-logs. It shows my 8-hour DOT clock doesn't start running till I start driving. It didn't used to do that. Did they change the rules? I know you can now use it, the 30-minute break for fueling, and as long as I pull away from the pumps and don't go over 4 miles an hour, it lets me stay on duty, not driving. Stay safe out there. God bless, driver Dave." You know, the reason I love this email is because it reminds me that how many people, you know, driver Dave's an experienced driver. You know, he's been driving for quite a while. He knows his stuff, but he's still a bit confused on the hours of service rules. And I've been encountering that more and more. You know, the place I work now, I run into these long timers who've worked in the industry for a long time, and they will say something and I'll go, "No, that's not the case anymore. You know, here's the way it works." And they're amazed, you know, like they've never heard of the adverse driving condition, or they had no idea that, you know, the 30-minute break was different, or that the 8-hour clock was different, or anything like that. And, you know, they're always pleasantly surprised. So I have to remind myself that even though I have a lot of experienced listeners, that maybe it's good to refresh stuff now and then. So here's what I wrote back to Dave. I was right. Yes, they did change the rules a while back. Stuff like the on-duty fueling, counting as a legal 30-minute break, was part of that. Actually, you can do a combination of anything, and as long as it totals 30 minutes continuous, it counts as a legal break. So 18 minutes of fueling on duty and 12 minutes of off duty to go take a giant trucker dump, and, well, that counts as a legal 30-minute break. Another part of that change is what you noticed. Your 8-hour clock does not start until you actually start driving. So that's pretty cool. I love that. Another thing to note is that the 8 hours countdown also stops counting if you stop along the way. That's new. That was never before. You were always racing. The way it used to work was it just kept running the 8 hours continuously after you got started. But now you can actually stop and say you go off duty for 3 minutes for a pee break, and you find yourself, when you come back into the truck, you find yourself you've still got the same amount of time on your 8 as you did when you went in. That three minutes is not coming off your 8-hour clock there. That's pretty cool. Now, obviously, that is if you log that 3 minutes pee break as off duty or sleeper. If you keep it in on duty or just leave it on the drive line while you're running, of course, it's going to keep on clicking. Now, another thing that I think a lot of people miss is that your 14-hour day still starts as soon as you go on duty. And that's a little weird, since the 8 hours doesn't start until you actually start driving, and then it pauses along the way if you stop for little breaks and stuff like that. But the 14-hour day, that's just as soon as you start your on-duty time, not your driving, but your on-duty time, that 14 hours is a set amount. Or is it? Well, yeah, that's something that changed recently too. The only way you can extend your 14-hour day is to go off duty or sleeper berth for at least 2 consecutive hours. Now, the thought behind this is that, you know, that's the first part of a sleeper berth, split sleeper berth break. So they're saying that smaller segment of that split can now be used to extend your day by however many hours. So let's say your 14 hours is going to be up at 6 p.m. and you stop somewhere along the way for a 3-hour break. Your new 14 would be extended out 3 hours to 9 p.m. If you took a 5-hour off-duty break for whatever reason, like, hey, had a shipper or something like that, your new 14 will be up at 11 p.m. Now, as you're probably thinking, yes, this could be a really long day. So you want to be careful with that. Now, the way I've always understood this, maybe somebody out there listening can tell me for sure, but I had the understanding that this was supposed to be optional for the driver, that you don't have to use a 2, 3, 4-hour break to extend your day if you don't want to work more than 14 hours in that day. But I'm not sure of that. Honestly, like my friend driver Chris Mack, he, when he does a break of 2, 3 or whatever, however many hours, it gives him a little checkbox, says, do you want to use this towards extending your day? And he can check that or not. My e-logs don't give me that option. It just, if I got 2 or 3 hours, it just extends my day out automatically. And then I'm going to have to argue with dispatch if I don't want to work that long. Now, thankfully, that's not me. If I can cram in some extra miles, I'll work a 17-hour day. Don't bother me one bit. I'm still going to get a 10-hour break afterwards. So what's the difference? But Dave writes back. He says, thanks. Yes, that does help. So they've realized we are actually humanoids and in need of restroom facilities with parking amenities and off-duty time to use such facilities. Cool. I heard they were going to add that rule exception. Maybe I can back out of the hammer a bit then. Keep your stick on the ice. Well, Dave, you can back off the hammer a bit if you want, but why would you if your truck will go fast, right? So anyway, Driver Dave, I hope that helped you understand that. It sounds like we had a couple more emails back and forth, and I think he got the gist of it and got all squared away there. If you are listening, I hope that helped you. If you have any questions on the hours of service, please write truckerdump@gmail.com, and I'll do my best to answer them. I have a pretty good grasp of e-logs now after all of the questions I have answered, and I get a lot of questions at work on this stuff from like say the long timers also. So pretty well versed on it, but hey, I get stuff screwed up too. So just give me a shout. I'll help if I can. Hey, I may have just lied. I said Driver Dave might be the person who has written in the most. Well, I forgot all about Greg T. Yeah, River Rat. Oh man, that would be a major showdown. Who has written in the most to the Trucker Dump podcast? That'd be a heck of a showdown.
Let's get ready to rumble.
All right. Well, Greg T has got 2 for me today, and they're both really quick. So we'll just knock these out. First, Greg loves trucker drag racing. If you want to see 30 solid minutes of it with lots of black smoke, because, black smoke matters, I'll put a link to a YouTube video in here. I don't remember where this is at, but it is, that's a lot of drag racing. So check that one out. There'll be a link in the show notes. And the other thing, Greg has a new YouTube weather channel. It actually says weather and road channel. So he does, I noticed the latest video was about some trucker gear that he likes, which is cool. Also, he covers the weather across the country, and he's trying to do this daily, it looks like. He's just getting started at this, so if you want to subscribe, I'm sure Greg would love that. I don't know what he's using when he's recording this, but it is a very detailed weather thing on his computer. I mean, it gives you all kinds of information that you don't get from a normal app. So that's kind of interesting. So anyway, I will put a link to his YouTube channel in here also, and please consider subscribing to this and help Greg get started. I'd also like to add that if you're a listener and you've got something online that you want to promote, have at it. Let me know. truckerdump@gmail.com. I'll give you a little plug. No worries. Thanks again, Greg, for both of these links. Appreciate it and your continuous contribution. Hope you're enjoying retirement. Sounds like you can't sit still. You got to be doing something. All right. Later, Greg. Hey, while I'm in promotion mode, let me tell you about Andrew Boodles. I think that's the way you say his name. He writes, loving the podcast. As a truck driver in the UK, it had really opened my eyes on how trucking works over there in the States. I have a social media presence myself. I am Trucker Andy on Facebook, Twitter, that's @trucker_Andy, Instagram, trucker_Andy, and YouTube. Over here in the UK, we have very different hours rules than yourselves. We've been using a form of e-log called a tachograph for 40 years. He says, I've attached a picture of my truck. It's a Volvo FH. That's a cab over, and it's cool looking, let me tell you. He says it's fitted with a 13-liter, 540 horsepower engine running through a 12-speed transmission, and it has 2 clutches. Yes, a dual clutch. My job is delivering slabs and bricks to sites and using a trailer-mounted remote-controlled crane to unload myself. Anyway, keep up the great work. Kind regards, Andy. Yeah, that's a cool looking truck. Well, I don't have photos of it, but it's a cool looking truck. Trust me. Actually, I will put a few of these photos in the link or in the podcast app. So if you have an app, just look at the chapter art. If it supports the show notes, you'll see them in there. Also, Andy offered up himself to come on the podcast and, talk about the difference between our countries from a driver's point of view. I think that's a great idea. As I've said before, I've thought about getting, somebody from the UK, Europe, Australia, and Canada, and along with myself to, have like a group chat, but and record it, maybe even on video. I think it'd be a good chat for people to listen to, long term, like some green, how do they call it? Evergreen material, where people could look back on that many years from now and, see that conversation between all these different countries. Problem is logistics, getting that thing worked where everybody has time off to do it. Everybody's got the technological savvy to pull it off. What a nightmare. So I'm guessing I'll probably just bring on each country by themselves. I have some ideas who I'm going to grab. Trucker Andy will probably be the guy since he's pretty good on YouTube, and I've watched some of his stuff. He's very articulate, and we'll probably have him on the show at some point. Trucker Andy, if you're there, I haven't forgotten about you. I wasn't going to go this long, but I've got 2 more, and, this is relevant. Somebody's asking a question. I need your help, so we're going to get this one and one other, knock it out. So the first of those is from Ken. He writes, I just listened to your podcast, Trucker Dump 147. That one was called Be Careful Choosing a Truck Driving School. That one's the one where we talked to driver C, who went to a crappy school. And it was, go check that one out. Horrible, horrible school experience. Anyway, he listened to Trucker Dump 147. He says, I find myself in the same shoes as your guest. I went to a 1-day CDL school and got my license. Ouch. My current situation is I'm still working in a manufacturing job and planning on getting a driving job within the next few years. My question for you, and you, the listener, because I need help here, is what should I do when that time comes? I have my license. However, no way I have enough skills to be on the road alone. I took my test in a manual truck, a 7-speed, 26-foot flatbed trailer. Including the testing, I was only behind the wheel for maybe 45 minutes the whole day. Wow. The school, if you can call it that, does testing themselves. Of course they do. Boy, oh God, that's just fraud waiting to happen. Obviously. He continues, I'm not sure where to go from here as I have a license with very little skills and wouldn't feel comfortable applying to most driving jobs as I wouldn't pass the road test. What can I do to bridge the gap in skills at this point? Thanks for your help. Well, my advice to Ken was that, first, I hate these schools. They've got to, thankfully with these new guidelines, hopefully they're going to be banned and they're going to be, they're going to require a certain amount of education for a new trucker, or training, I should say, for a new trucker. Hopefully we'll get that going soon. Wow. I hate the fact that they steal your money and just go on to the next person. That pisses me off. Anyway, right now I see basically 2 options. Again, need your help. If you got 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, I'm sure Ken is open to any help he can get here. My options were go back to a different truck driving school and start over again. If you were only in the truck for 45 minutes, you haven't had any training. So my advice would just be to go back to school, start over again. But if you don't want to do that, second advice, call some trucking companies and just be honest with them about not having the skills to pass. I know lots of different companies out there have what they call driver refreshers, where, you've got your license. It's just been, many years since you've driven, whatever the case may be. They might just put you with a trainer. And if you can get that shifting back under, in control within a week or so, they might just set you loose. Worst case scenario, you go 3 or 4 weeks, and then you've got the 3 or 4 weeks of actual training from a real trucker that you should have gotten in the first place. I would do one of those 2 options. Take your pick. Or wait around until you hear from listeners. If I get any suggestions from anyone else, I'll make sure it goes on episode 160, so you will get the information right away. Also, Ken joined the Slack channel. I put him in here. He offered to sign up. I don't remember if he's in there or not yet. Ken, if you're not, get in there and ask some questions and get on this. Thanks for writing in, Ken. I appreciate it. And again, if you've got suggestions for Ken, please give me a shout. truckerdump@gmail.com. Thanks. And to finish up for the day, you might remember from the last episode that a new listener named George wrote in, and I really was all over the place on his last name. Didn't know how to pronounce it, and George is here to help me out. The audio quality isn't the best, but hey, I'll take what I can get.
Hi, Todd. This is George Hine. Thanks for the introduction last month during the podcast in November. Sorry it took so long to get to you. Kept slipping my mind and never got my round to it. Finally got my round to it and sending you the auto report. I'll try to keep it short. You were questioning the pronunciation of my name. Unfortunately, it's not Heine, but you're definitely not the first one to make that mistake.
I'll bet.
Back in boot camp, I was the drill instructor's private Heine when they finally did realize who I was, but it's just plain old Heine. I appreciate the shout out. Thanks for all you do. Keep up the great work. Thanks, Todd.
Private Heine. Love that. Yes, I'm very disappointed, George, that your last name is not Heine, but Hein works just as good, I suppose. Now, there's a lesson in this to you, the listener. If you just send audio comments all the time and not emails all the time, there's no risk of mispronouncing your name. Now, maybe you find that an interesting and fun part of the podcast. I don't know. Maybe it's torture. Just trying to make me pronounce names that I clearly can't pronounce. But whatever it is, I will take your audio comments anytime you want to send them to me. truckerdump@gmail.com. Well, this episode has gone on long enough, and that is even without a main topic. Yeah, let's hope we can get back to that on the next episode. Man, is my voice crapping out on me. Still got to record the sponsors and the intro and out too. Whew. Voice is going to be shot by the end of this day. Anyway, I guess we ought to get on out of here. So, what do you think of these episodes that are basically all news all the time? Would you subscribe to a weekly podcast that just covered the news? Let me know. So anyway, if you've got comments on current or past episodes, questions, suggestions, or want a free plug for something you do online, please give me a shout at truckerdump@gmail.com. And hey, if you haven't told anyone about the show in a while, please do so. And if you haven't subscribed or followed for free yet, please get on that lickety-split. But subscribed or not, I always appreciate you listening and tolerating my constant tardiness. You know, you'd make a really crappy high school principal. So until next time, drive safe and stay out of my way. All right. If you remember in the last podcast, we spoke with Dave Dine from the Next Generation in Trucking Association. All of the above recalls can be found at all of the above what? Continuing with the equipment topic and itching my nose while I do it. Hey, next up, I got an email from a gentleman named Joseph Janal. Easy for me to say. While we might. Actually, I'm saving some of those for something special. So, no, this is stupid. Don't say that.